All set. Hold on. All right, it's working. I'm good. Just let me know when you want me to send it live to everything and I'll turn it all on. Just leave it running though.
So leave it all, okay.
Yeah, the broadcast button opens up the webinar, and then what you sent me allows me to make it live on Facebook and the channel on YouTube. So those are the
Okay.
things.
So I hit the broadcast at like 5 minutes too.
Yeah, and then let me know when you want it to be on live on all the channels as well.
Okay.
All right.
How you doing, Martha? You're on mute.
I know, good, busy.
Yeah.
Yeah, trying to, match. It's a little mismatched at the moment,
Yeah.
right?
Hi, Pamela.
But,
I got my baby to school today. How great is that?
oh, that's good.
Which
I know, I dropped her off today.
which one and which school?
UVM, my baby.
Oh.
That's sad. I mean, but not really. It was happy. It was weird. There was like no one there. It's just strange. Her roommate doesn't come for 3 days. There's like no one in the dorm really. It's weird.
Did you have like a scheduled drop off so there weren't too many people at the same
Yeah,
time?
she had to get dropped off between 9 and 12, and you couldn't. Not everyone. We weren't supposed to be able to go back in after we like left, but we did because there wasn't really very many people hanging around policing that. So we went back in after we ran to Target and got a few more things. But yeah, her roommate doesn't come till Friday. There, the people next door weren't there. It's just kind of different. No one was like helping carry things in, which kind of sucked. But it was good.
My friend dropped their kid off at Bryant. She was supposed to be in a triple, and about a month ago, one of the girls backed out, and then the day before, the other girl backed out. So she's in a triple by herself.
Wow.
Which I think if you were an upperclassman might be great, but
Yeah.
as a freshman,
That's tough.
yeah, want your roomies. Need somebody to eat, somebody to eat dinner with.
Especially since people aren't allowed, no one's allowed in anyone's room other than your roommate. So it's kind of crazy. Crazy.
Hi, Kelly. I have
So
a feeling
Martha and Pam, since our last policy meeting, obviously CDC has updated some things. Did you guys see that? After I got off the meeting with you, I saw the news and I was like, wow. So I have a new sentence.
No, we've been so focused on other stuff. I haven't even watched the news in the last
Well,
couple
that's why I took care of it. I called Gargi and I was like, I need a sentence to deal with this change. Help me. Yeah, crazy.
what did they say? I don't even know.
Oh, they just changed.
No testing.
So somehow the new protocols from the CDC are getting edited in DC with so they're saying you don't have to get tested. If you've been in close contact with someone, you don't have to get tested. You can see your primary and get tested there if you think there's a need. I think the goal is to cut down on testing. Interesting, right?
Yeah.
So we just have to say
better.
You need to follow MADPH guidelines because that's crazy.
So Amy, heads up that I'm going to start tonight with the fact that I do not want to delay the FY21 budget presentation again. And we do have an athletic update and we have my presentation. And so just so you know, I got the latest building assessment report at 3:30 today.
Nice.
So I'll be sharing it with all of you after this meeting, and then obviously Sean Fitzgerald and whoever else over there. But Max is going to come to the September 9th meeting. So I'm hoping for not a lot of questions and just my explanation tonight, my high level highlights. And then I want to redirect to September 9th when Max is going to be here with additional information. So, I mean, how can you guys start asking questions when you haven't read the report yet?
Well, plus I think it's probably more important for you to just kind of highlight what you guys are working on. So.
Correct. And I just want to, I shared all of this with Rebecca earlier, Becca Buckland. And so for those of you that don't know, there was a Board of Health request from just a Board of Health member. I'm not engaging in that. I'm sending it to Jeff Vaughn. I'm sending it to Sean Fitzgerald and saying that he can disseminate it to the emergency management team if he wants, and that's the Board of Health. But I don't want to engage in a lot of time in my presentation because I do think Kelly's athletic update is important. And
well, and I can tell you that's what people are. That's what I'm hearing about. So I would imagine, Kelly. I don't know. I don't know if you're close by. Can you hear me? No. I want to figure out if she wants to field questions or not.
so the Beverly superintendent, Kelly, the Beverly superintendent reached out to me about an hour ago. Actually, everybody in NEC, and she asked if we could have a meeting Friday afternoon. I told her that we had met this morning with Dennis and Martha and myself, and that you were presenting tonight. So I shared your presentation with her. She's a really good person, and you had mentioned, the Beverly AD was taking a lot of heat. So I just shared your presentation. I said I haven't even read it truthfully yet because I was still writing my presentation. So she reached out about an hour ago.
So, Kelly, can I ask, are you, I have a feeling people are going to log in and want to ask questions, or really more likely tell you how awful you are, because that's how we all operate. I said to Pam, I'm repeating myself. Like, you could close the schools down and people are like, oh, okay. But you take away sports and everybody's got the pitchforks out.
Yeah.
So I would imagine, based on my text yesterday and today, that we're going to have some people log on. So normally what happens is we have public comment at the beginning, which we don't respond to. But if you wanted to make room for questions, we could do that, but we don't have to. I'm seeing Pam say no. But I think we need to allow for public comment and keep it short. To do that, I want to, Suzanne, I want to guide them to either email or text you.
Okay.
So that there's no anonymous.
Well, I can't, when they text me, I see a phone number, right? Or an email, I'll see their email name if it's not identifiable.
Right, but you can ask them, who is this?
Yeah.
And did you guys see, and I might have missed this earlier, that both us and Peabody are yellow now?
No, I didn't see that. Today's Wednesday. I didn't check it at 4 o'clock.
So that's another 2 NEC schools that are now minimally yellow. So,
well, I think when you explain everything you explained to Martha and me this morning, I think it's really going to paint a picture of why the decisions were made. So I think public comment's fine. I think we've been more than generous with fielding Q&As, and I do not think we should open a dialogue. It's not traditionally what we do with the school committee.
So I will do what I have done in the past then, and encourage people, if they would like to ask questions, that they can put the questions on the Q&A, but we won't be responding to them, but we will take it under advisement. But I will have a public comment at the beginning and just limit it to 2 minutes each.
Sounds good. Can I be made a co-host so I can share my screen?
I can happily do that.
Thank you.
Pam, will my presentation be taken care of, or should I in some way be putting that on there myself?
No, I linked it on the agenda, so I will control that, and you can just have the next slide.
Okay, perfect.
So I have both of our presentations ready to go. I'm gonna keep my order though, unfortunately, and you're gonna have to sit through my presentation, Kelly.
That's fine, no worries. I was planning to stay anyway, so.
Okay.
And you should be a co-host now.
You can shut your
I
video
am,
off. and go
thank you.
to dinner.
Yep.
Pam, it's Martha. Did you test opening the link from Kelly? Because I couldn't open it.
I did test. Yep, it opens.
Okay, just making sure.
I actually need to have it up
Hey,
on.
Dennis, you're on as Kelly Farley. You might want to rename yourself.
Who's on what?
Dennis is on as
Dennis
Kelly
is
Farley.
listed as Kelly
Like,
Farley.
rename yourself.
You're also on mute. You're on mute, Dennis.
You don't look like you are on mute, but your audio doesn't look like it's working.
Hey, Pam,
Yeah,
just let me know if you want to throw it to me. Just say, Martha, do you want to jump in or anything
I
like that?
will, because I bulleted some of what we talked about today, and I might just say at the end, you can tell me what slide to go back to. Do you have anything to add?
Okay.
As I got into it, it was a combination of how we've revised. It's just a whole bunch of stuff. I feel like all I'm doing is spewing the same stuff to a different group of people in the last few days.
All right, I don't want to jump in unless you want me to. So,
No,
Okay,
I will absolutely. I'm trying to bring it up on this computer. I'm stupid.
you guys, I'm gonna open this up so people can start to come in since it's just a few minutes before.
Okay, then I'm gonna go on my other computer. Okay.
So Joe, does that mean I hit broadcast?
Yeah, broadcast is what brings everyone in, and then also hit cloud record to cloud.
Okay. I'll do that at 7.
Okay, I started mine now, just so I didn't forget.
Oh, it says recording.
Yours does?
Uh-huh.
I don't see a record thing next to your name, so down the
On
bottom.
the, on the top of my screen, it says live on custom live streaming service and then a red button for recording.
That's me. That just means that someone's recording. But if you
Oh.
go to record and do record on cloud, then that means you're recording as well. That means we have 2 recordings, just have a backup.
Okay, I'll wait till 7 o'clock to hit that.
Okay, and then just let me know when you want me to put it live on the channels.
Hey Pam, should any of the people coming in as attendees be moved over to panelists or not? Just FYI, I see some people.
No.
Okay.
Possibly Becca Buckland because she's gonna speak during public comment. But Joe, you're on hand for that, right?
Yeah, I can help with that if you need, but Suzanne, either way.
I don't have, I'm not a co-host, so I'm just
I would-
saying.
Yeah, one of us would need to be co-host to be able to do that.
Okay, I can do that. Who would rather be the co-host?
Well, I can do it because I think Joe maybe has some more things to do.
Okay, Suzanne, you are a co-host. I'll wait another minute before I start broadcasting.
You already are broadcasting, I think, right?
Mm-mm.
Can I switch
Sorry,
to
you're broadcasting, you're not recording.
make me a co-host again?
Oh, okay, you are a co-host, Pam.
Doesn't say so here.
Oh.
I switched computers. I don't know if it doesn't say. Oh, I do have the option of sharing screen, so maybe I am a co-host. I don't know.
It doesn't say it on my computer.
Doesn't
either.
say it on mine, okay.
It does say Suzanne's a co-host, so there I am. Okay, perfect. Thank you.
All right, I am gonna start to record.
You're using my telephone number. Is it written down somewhere on the agenda, right?
It is on the agenda.
Amy, you want me to push this live onto the channels?
Can we move
Sid,
Dennis over?
any chance you can get me a couple of Advil?
Um,
Yeah.
I just brought Dennis.
Ibuprofen, sorry,
as
ibuprofen.
panelist.
Yes, please.
Okay, so Dennis came in as panelist. I think he's the only other one that needs to be in.
All right, Joe, if you want, you can push it out to the channels,
All right,
please.
I'll let you know when they're all active.
One, two, three. Do we have Ted? Yep, there's Ted. Okay. Just want to make sure all the school committee people are here.
You're live on Facebook and the channel, just waiting on YouTube. All right, you're live on everything.
Awesome. Okay, so I'm going to call this meeting to order. The Swampscott Public Schools, the school committee meeting, regular session, Wednesday, August 26th at 7 o'clock. In accordance with executive order issued by Governor Baker on March 12th, 2020, the order suspending certain provisions to the open meeting law. This is being held on Zoom. So tonight I see that we have a good number of participants, including one of our principals who has her hand raised.
Hey, Amy, you want to do the pledge?
No,
Okay.
No. Sorry about that. So I'm sorry, I just got sidetracked. I see that Mary Beth Shea is raising her hand, and I'm going to assume it's because Pam, do you know, is she a co-host or?
No, there's, no, the principals may be attending, but they would be as attendees. And we're not, they need to text if they want, they need to text what's on the agenda if they want to speak at public comment rather than sign up, so.
Okay, so we've been experimenting with a couple of different formats. This is for the public in terms of public comments. We are going to host a public comment tonight. We are going to limit it to 10 minutes and ask that people hold their individual comments to 2 minutes each. If you are interested in speaking in public comment, please text Suzanne Wright. The number is 617-821-5075. You can also email her at Wright, that's WRIGHT, at swampscott.k12.ma.us. And Mary Beth, I am going to.
No, it's not raised.
It's not. I see you still raised.
No.
Okay. Again, if you want to speak during public comment, it's 617-821-5075. I'll give it a few more minutes.
Do you want to do community announcements and then go back to public comment?
Why don't we go ahead? Ted, do you want to start? You're on mute.
Thank you. I'll be very quick. It's nice to see the 100 participants. Because of that, really quick, nice for the 8th grade graduation. Some beautiful kids there. Congratulations. Thank you.
John, do you have anything you want to share?
For now, I'm okay, Amy, so thank you.
All right. Karen?
I don't have anything, thanks.
And Suzanne? You're on mute.
Nope, I'm fine too, thanks.
I am seeing a message from the SEA that they would like to speak. So it looks like that might be Becca Buckland. And if so, if you could raise your hand in the attendee list, that way I can see you.
All right, I can answer. Can you get that?
Yeah. Becca, I think that you can talk. Oh, good. I see you on the screen.
Oh, God.
All right, so,
You know,
well, I just see your photo on screen. Becca, this is Rebecca Buckland. She is the head of the Swampscott Education Association, our teachers union, if you'd like to go ahead.
thank you so much. Thank you for allowing us to speak. We want to thank Superintendent Angelakis, her team, and the school committee for continuing to work with us and showing the flexibility that this pandemic situation calls for. We also want to thank all the teachers who have been coming to our weekly meetings in unprecedented numbers, as well as all the parents and students who are also trying their best to figure this thing out and make the difficult adjustments and decisions. We are all in this together, and no one has all the answers, not even the scientists. As Ms. Shelyanovsky, one of our veteran science teachers, explained at the last school committee meeting, science needs constant testing and retesting and reevaluation of theories. Science, she said, is still in the early stages of learning about the virus. Yesterday, a report from NBC News proved that she was right. Here's a direct quote from that NBC report. The new analysis from MIT and Oxford University calls the 6-foot social distancing rule outdated science. In the just published report, evidence suggests that the coronavirus could travel up to 26 feet in the air with viral spread amplified by someone coughing or shouting. As scientists start testing and retesting these findings, our teachers and students should not be the guinea pigs who risk their lives by coming into a building with chairs set up to keep students 6 feet apart, when this new research says they might need a distance of more like 26 feet to be safe. Let's admit that we don't know everything, and let's continue to err on the side of caution. Let's not assume that one DESE guideline or one report on our buildings guarantees the safety of our teachers and students. Let's put ourselves in the position of never knowing how much tragedy we avoided because we knew enough to listen to the scientists when they said that they didn't know enough to be certain. We know that no one, no teacher, student, administrator, or parent is winning here. However, let's all collectively do what we can to safely start school. This means opening remotely to start without requiring educators to teach on Zoom from their empty classrooms and allowing them to work from home. We know remote learning is not ideal, but teachers have shown up in droves over the summer to work with our administration to try to create something that is going to vastly improve upon the spring, engage our students, and teach them new material. We need to phase in our return to school by following science, data, and logic. We promise you, we want nothing more than to return to how things were, to high five our students in the morning, or if you're at the elementary level, give them a big hug, or fist bump them on the way out after teaching them in person. By phasing in our return to school according to science, we have the best chance to stay there in person permanently. Thank you so much for working with all of us. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Becca. I just want to say we have been in near constant talks. The negotiations committee, which includes myself, Karen Marshall, the superintendent Angelakis, and her team with Martha Raymond, Martha Seibert, and Julie DeLillo. So thank you for sharing that. Suzanne, do we have any?
Well, I see next in line is Sue Henderson, and then
Oh, right.
I'm gonna allow her to talk.
Okay, are you doing that?
Yep,
Okay,
so Sue can talk.
Sue, if you could just identify yourself and what district you're from, precinct, sorry.
She's an EL teacher.
Oh, Sue, my apologies.
I actually accidentally hit the button. So I'm sorry.
All right,
Hard
so
to
then
keep
Barry,
up with the rest of the
Keeping it
meeting.
brief.
all right, so Barry, you can talk.
If you could identify yourself, please.
Barry, unmute yourself.
This is
there you
Barry
go.
Greenfield. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Thanks, Suzanne. Thanks, Amy. And thank you to the school committee and to all the teachers who've worked to get us to this point. And Pam, thank you for your hard work as well. I think I just would like to say that for the 70% of the parents who said they want their kids back in school through the survey that was sent out, there are many of us out here who don't support the decision to go remote from the beginning, especially with the data that shows right now less than 5 cases in Swampscott. Kids have been outside all year playing sports. I mean, I'll tie in the sports decision that came out last night that makes no sense. If kids aren't going to be in school, why can't they play sports? Where's the risk there? There's so many of us who don't understand some of the decisions that have been made, and we're looking for answers. And we can appreciate some of the sentiment around the COVID situation, but again, the data does not support the decision to be remote. The kids want to be in school. Parents want their kids in school. Parents are comfortable with their kids in school safely with distancing. We respect the guidelines that have been given. What's that? And masks. But we believe that the wrong decision has been made. And going forward over the next few days and next week, there are going to be plenty more parents out there who are going to express the same, and children and students who are going to express the same opinion. So I would, if you can comment on whatever you are willing to divulge in terms of how we got to where we are. And I don't know if you can comment about the sports decision, but that would be helpful as well.
So we do have a presentation coming tonight from Kelly Farley, who is our athletic director. That's going to come after the superintendent's report. So I hope you hang on for that. I think that will explain some of what you're asking about. And you can reach out to the school committee afterwards if you still do have questions. And I think as it relates to if I'm hearing you right, the larger question, which is how did we get to the plan? Are you asking how we got to the plan that we did?
Yeah, I guess what I'm asking is the guidance came down from the governor that was very clear that said for the color denomination of Swampscott right now, which is either transparent or white, whatever you want to call it on the map, when you have less than 5 cases over the previous 2 weeks, the 2 options are full in-class or in-person schooling or hybrid. So to all of us out there who responded, we want our kids in class, that would be 70%. We're a little mystified at how we ended up at a remote only.
Oh, can I just say that the reopening plan that's on the website will share a little bit of that, Barry. In addition, my presentation tonight will share some of that. And we were just discussing this prior to the start of this meeting, that we're no longer unshaded in Swampscott. We've gone to yellow. So a little bit of information there, but I think if you hang on, first of all, the reopening plan, the comprehensive plan, gives a little bit of information, as did my presentation at the last meeting, but tonight's report is even tweaked a little bit more. So that potentially should answer some questions.
And I will say, because I know not everybody has been able to listen to every meeting over the last few weeks, and there have been a number of them. If you do have the possibility to go back and listen to last week's meeting, it was the superintendent fair to Shirley comprehensive plan, and not just the plan, but how we got there. And I think it's important to know that while the mayor has come out and said he would like everybody back to school, that we have different realities from town to town, and a lot of what's happening here in Swampscott has to do with very outdated infrastructure that there's nobody in town who's not aware of, small buildings, and that plays into a large piece of it. So it's easy, I think, to look at other towns and compare ourselves, but some towns have newer buildings. Some towns have newer buildings with not only better airflow, but air conditioning. And these are all just examples of things that influence what makes one town different from another town. So I don't want to talk too much more about that. So I'm going to turn this over to the superintendent, because I don't see any other texts or emails. But Barry, I would be happy to talk with you further offline if you would like.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am going to share my screen, and my superintendent's report is actually a presentation this week. There are two things that I want to talk about. One is a reopening update, and the second is the building assessment report that has come out. I'm going to give a high-level overview, and I want to preface it by saying there's still work to be done, and our Director of Facilities, Max Casper, was unable to attend tonight, but he will be attending the September 9th meeting. And school committee, I think it was 3:30 this afternoon that I got the final report. So after this meeting, I'll be sending it to all of you, so you'll be able to read it prior to the September 9th meeting, so you can ask questions. And there'll be more information because I believe there is a meeting tomorrow morning to talk about the scope of the work, Martha Seibert, in our next steps. So I'm going to share my screen right now and bring up my updated presentation. Get everybody out of the way. Oops, that's not it. So a couple of questions have come up, and as I was saying earlier, I feel like I've spoken to so many different groups of people. In fact, we had a 2-hour leadership team meeting today. I had my Tuesday talk with the district. Yesterday, we had over 220 staff, faculty and staff attending that. We had, there's so many meetings that I'm trying to circle back and make sure that I share all of the same information with all of the groups. So one of the things, the questions that have come up, and something that I've been working on since we had the comprehensive plan submitted, is the needs for staffing. And one of the needs that we have articulated is the fact that we need an occupational health nurse. An occupational health nurse would be, would not be in the union, would be an administrator who would report directly to me, where the current nursing staff that are in the collective bargaining agreement currently are supervised or report to our assistant superintendent of student services. But that occupational health nurse would be hired specifically to help with the health and well-being and policies and practices and procedures and regulations surrounding COVID. So it would be focused on the overall health and well-being of our school community with the COVID-19. We have nurses that are already very taxed in their roles. We have a part-time lead nurse that has a lot of work to do, and I'm trying to anticipate in the event that we need additional assistance at a school, that lead nurse could be deployed there. So I'm really looking to hire someone that would be part of the central office administrative team and would report directly to me and help with this pandemic. COVID testing, things have changed. I can't see Martha Seibert's face, but she's probably smiling. Within the last hour, we originally were targeting August 31st and September 1st to have the staff tested. Martha had created an electronic pre-registration. We were articulating the location. We went back and forth between the high school, the middle school, or Stanley School. If we did it on September 1st, we had voting in precincts 1 and precinct. We have been told that doing it. What's my internet connection?
Was that just me, or did that cut out for the superintendent?
I think it cut out for me. Can you hear me now?
I can.
Yes.
Okay. It did come up with the internet connection is unstable.
Okay.
So
you were talking about, the last I heard you were talking about the different locations.
Okay. So there's voting to consider if we were doing it on August 31st and September 1st. But the people the medical professionals we're consulting with and speaking with how our plan has been revised and changed had said it's really important to try to stay within 72 hours. You'll see in my plan as we move forward, August 31st and September 1st seem a little bit early. So we're probably pushing that testing out Martha Seibert has the burden of revisiting with Cataldo Ambulance their availability. There are other districts that are contracting with them. So the bottom line is, if we are not having staff return for professional development and collaboration, which you'll see later in my presentation on August 31st in person, then we need to push the testing out, but that is still going to occur. So I want to recap a couple of highlights from the August 12th meeting, because what we spend every single day doing, it seems, is in meeting, and we're reflecting, we're reevaluating, we're regrouping, and we're revising our plans. I was speaking to my leadership team today, and the analogy that came to mind is that I feel like our submission on August 14th of the comprehensive plan was like when you purchase a car, brand new car, and you drive off the lot and it's lost its value. I feel like we submitted that on August 14th, and by Monday, things were changing. So we put our best foot forward. We put in a 55-page document. We checked that box for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education. But the reality is, when you moved forward on that following Monday, you needed to start reconsidering. And when I watched the news the other morning, I saw that Newton is changing their plans. Everybody's plans are changing. We have said since March and this pandemic hit that this situation is fluid. It is still fluid by the hour, because as you try to figure out the logistics of all of this, and you'll see in my presentation what I'm talking about, it's not as easy as bringing everyone back. And yes, our buildings assessment has shown that, but also there's other reasons. So on August 12th, I was submitting the comprehensive plan to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, check. At that time, we talked about Wednesday, September 16th being the first day of school for our high needs students. And we identified those groups as special education students, English learners, and students who are not engaged in spring on a case-by-case basis. That was the 12th. We want nothing more than to provide in-person learning for all our students, but we have significant challenges. We have a shortage of staff that's available for in-person learning due to the fact that they're facing the same challenges as everybody else. We're facing childcare, they're facing health issues. We have learning spaces that are limited due to our HVAC issues, and I will get into that with the building assessments. We're creating isolation rooms based on the recommendations of professionals and not just our internal staff, and burdening our nurses with this. Part of the plans that came in today, the final version, have identified potential isolation rooms, taken that burden off the nurses and the principals to try to identify that, and the consideration of ongoing health metrics. The fact that we've gone from unshaded to yellow just shows the ebb and flow of this virus and where it's at. So dates for an in-person return have been impacted by those challenges. As a result, we need to reevaluate and we need to revise our targets. So we have determined that faculty and staff will be online for safety training, mandatory trainings, professional development, and collaboration. This means from August 31st, right now till September 9th, they will be online remotely from home while we are able to continue with the building work. We've also had to step back, which is really, really difficult, I would say, for all of the principals and all of the administration. And we've had to really phase in our approach, even with our high needs cohorts. What can we really do when we don't have the staff? We have staff with extenuating circumstances. We have staff with childcare issues, and they are entitled to leave. And so how are we going to manage this if we brought back all of our high needs groups at the same time? We also have to identify spaces for these programs and for these students. And I'll say this again later in one of my slides, but the reality hit, and Garrett Baker, Max Casper, Martha Raymond, and myself took a walk to, a ride, to the middle school where we're at, and to Stanley School, and started to identify specific classrooms according to the maps that we've been given and the diagrams we've been given, where we can start September 16th with our most needy students. And it took us about an hour and a half just in 2 buildings to identify spaces and any mitigations that were going to have to happen in that space in order to bring such a small number of students in. So our revised target for September 16th, instead of all of our high needs students, the following groups of students would be coming in: the integrated preschool, elementary, middle, and high school Strive and Discovery programs for students with autism, or our substantially separate programs, high school Harbor program, special education testing, and some small group check-ins with counselors. The following staff would be scheduled to return on September 10th: our nurses, our school psychologists, school adjustment counselors and guidance staff, our integrated preschool teachers and ESPs and tutors, elementary, middle, and high school Strive, Discovery programs, and educators for students with autism, our educators for the high school Harbor program, our therapists, including speech, OT, and PT, occupational therapy and physical therapy, team chairs, our district BCBA, and all ESPs and all ABA tutors. So that is the staff that we are targeting to come in by the 10th.
Pam, do you have a ballpark of how many people that is?
I'll throw that to Martha Raymond.
Our ESPs and tutors are about 80. And for the teachers, it will be 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, probably 12 to 13 teachers. And we have about 7 to 8 school psychologists and counselors.
We're close to 100, would you say, Mrs. Raymond?
Yeah.
Close to 100.
So not quite half. So with the teachers union at 220, I think it is, plus the ESPs, we're generally at about 300 educators.
Right.
Okay, so we're at about a third.
Right. So it's like 217 or 218 teachers. We're somewhere in the 300s, but so we'd be talking about 100. So the other revised targets, just to reiterate that because we've narrowed down the number of students we're bringing in on that 16th, all the other high needs groups would have remote instruction. They have IEPs, individual educational plans. Those services are going to have to be delivered. They would definitely be delivered remotely. And as we've talked about before, our remote instruction is very, very different than it was in the spring. The goal right now and the target is by September 28th, a couple of weeks later, additional special education staff returns. And by October 5th, our target is that all students with IEPs begin some in-person instruction. So, you know, when I think about, and we've talked about this a lot at central office, that we phased in return of custodial staff when this hit, administrative assistant staff, administration, school principals. And I look at this approach as very similar. Things are changing so rapidly. For example, I didn't even put this in here. We now, just this week and yesterday, a poster went up. We have a QR code. When any employee scans into the building, you use your iPhone and you self-certify every single day. So we're now using technology rather than filling out a form, killing trees. Martha Seibert was very concerned that with 350 people in 1 week, the amount of paper we would have. Shout out to LaTanya Mackey-Knowles, our director of technology. She worked with Julie DeLillo. We got a QR code on a poster. It was at the front door this morning, put my iPhone up, self-certified. So those are things that are changing so rapidly, and getting them in place prior to everybody coming back and talking about it is important. So the building assessment overview, some of this comes straight from the report that obviously is going to be a public document. And some of it comes from a conversation and meeting I had with the director of facilities and our school business administrator today. And when we hired LBA and their subcontractor, it was really a high level but effective and detailed survey of all the ventilation systems in all the schools with recommendations. And as Martha Seibert articulated earlier today, it really created a roadmap with us for a beginning for our district. And it puts us in a position to tackle all of the issues in a very, very methodical way. This next bullet comes directly from the report. The recommendations included are based on the best available knowledge at the time of the writing and include information from DESE released June 25th, 2020 and July 22nd, 2020, along with recommendation from ASHRAE released July 17th, 2020. That's where this information comes from. So let's talk about an overview of the schools. The elementary schools require the most immediate attention. I don't think there's any surprise there with the knowledge that our district has submitted statement of interest with the MSBA for all 3 of our elementary schools. And when their senior study team came out, they recommended we get all those statement of interests in. So that's not a surprise. 2 out of the 3 schools visited, Stanley and Clark, did not have properly operating exhaust systems for part or all of the school buildings. Hadley School ventilation systems were found to be operating properly, with only minor modifications needed to office areas without ventilation currently. Now, some of these issues, and I can't probably show you on the maps, but some of what has happened in our district is we've always made do with our facilities. And so having been a building principal, I know that there were walls built. Our facilities department has spent so much time breaking up spaces, building walls so that we have all of these different spaces jiggered, and ventilation and univents weren't considered when we did it. It was about servicing students. So that shouldn't be a huge surprise. The middle school and high school, the Swampscott Middle School ventilation systems were operating properly for the most part and meet code required ventilation rates. Office areas need to be updated so that fresh outside air and exhaust flow is maintained in all spaces. And as we would hope, Swampscott High School ventilation systems were operating properly and meet or exceed code required ventilation rates in all areas. That's not a surprise. So the floor plans and diagrams, and as I mentioned, these came in probably 3:20 this afternoon as I was putting this together. I'm going to show you each one. I'm going to go through the key, the color key, and you'll just see what information it presents. So here is Clark. On this document is both the first floor and the second floor. And Martha Seibert, I'm going to ask you to unmute yourself to make sure I get this language articulated properly, since you've been on conference calls with the vendor.
Sure.
So anything in red or pink, it looks pink here, is to avoid use for in-person teaching at this time in a pandemic. It does not mean that a single body couldn't be in that space working by themselves. It is just putting lots of bodies in that place during a pandemic that is not recommended. There is orange that was not on the floor plans that I shared with my leadership team this morning. And that just means that this space is under further evaluation. Some of them they weren't able to get into. They came back this week, just yesterday, and they were going back into them. The yellow means that it needs minor modifications. Now, whether that minor modifications can be done internally by our facilities department or by a contractor that we call in, it's still to be determined, and that's what we're figuring out now. And then the green means the space is ready for use. However, the green areas, and I've been educated with our director of facilities, still need verification. We still want to go in there and make sure everything's perfect. This is the preliminary report, and these are areas that can be used, but we definitely would verify that. So if you look at Clark, the majority of the spaces are yellow. And they're also, the legend notes talk about office, letter A, office space requires a louver on the wall or a door to transfer air. And this is what Martha, Raymond, Max, Garrett, and I solved yesterday when we were trying to locate spaces for the September 16th entry. You know, Max was talking about putting a grate in the wall, and Mrs. Raymond came up with, well, let's take the door off the hinges. The airflow, that solves that problem between these two spaces. That was a classroom divided by our facilities department building a wall. So some of the mitigation is very simple. It's because a univent ended on one side of this self-installed wall and the exhaust was on the other side. And the airflow by removing the door solves the problem. The other thing I want to point out here is that on this side of the diagram, they have now recommended areas following the guidelines for designated isolation rooms. They call them proposed quarantine rooms. They're isolation rooms, medical waiting rooms. And the guidelines they're following is something that is, one, either close to the current health office, but more importantly, is on an exterior space that could be exhausted out the building so that the air in there is not sitting, and also for ease of pickup of these students or faculty or staff members. So these are proposed quarantine rooms, and they were not even on the diagrams that I shared with the leadership team earlier. What you'll note in some of these floor plans is right here, letter D, requires dampers to be open and exhaust ducts, then ventilation will be adequate. Under normal conditions, the average size 800 square foot classroom allows for 22 occupants. Under current social distancing conditions, this space is recommended for 11 occupants. So that is 10 students and 1 adult. So that is something that we need to consider. And in talking about this with our building principals today, they're really going to have to go classroom by classroom, looking at the class list assignments and figuring out which rooms need teacher materials and extra furniture removed from them and stored somewhere. So I'm going to giving that kind of overview. Let me take you through the other buildings, and then unless the school committee has some specific questions about this right now.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So Martha, are each one of these letters sort of have a price tag associated with them? I mean, is that something you're just trying to figure out?
No.
So, oh no, sorry, go ahead. Do you have?
And I just want to know, is this like, are these COVID related? Are these things we can repair with CARES or COVID related funding?
So thank you for the question, Mrs. Wright. So most of what's in yellow here in Clark has already been fixed. It was an exhaust system issue that that a contractor was able to address last week. So most of this will turn green very soon. So it already has been fixed. Yes, we can use CARES Act money for this, and we are looking into that. The scope of work, the director of facilities, Max Casper, and I are meeting with a engineering firm tomorrow morning to review the scope of work that they've provided for us to go out to either bid or get quotes. We're working on that with the appropriate authorities on whether or not we just have to ask for an emergency waiver to bypass some of the public posting and advertising rules right now. But the long answer is we don't have a dollar amount yet. And yes, we can use CARES funds to address this.
And in addition to that, to answer the question, Suzanne, there's a phrase Max said that is in one of my slides, and it's accurate. Everything that can be done now is being done now with the vendor that we have. We had multiple vendors working on multiple projects, minimal projects at Clark. So I anticipated this one coming back because I had heard that a little bit more green. But again, these are fluid, and as things get mitigated, they're going to change. The colors are going to change.
And are the colors changing because the same consultants are going in and looking at them again? Like, so not because we say we fixed them, it's because someone tested that we fixed them.
That they've been certified.
Yeah.
We have a director of facilities that is going to be verifying even the green spaces. I don't know that it would, maybe Martha Cyber could speak to this. I don't know that it's going to be LBA coming back. I think they've given the recommendations to our facilities department, and our facilities department will be working with contractors for the recommendations and the checklist, and whatever this bid or quote that we're calling for, that'll be the work that's completed, and that'll be the checks and balances for that.
All right. Thanks.
Let me go on to, everything's moving when you share your screen. Suddenly my toolbar is at the top. Let me go on to the Hadley School. Hadley School, surprisingly, has a lot of green space. This is the basement. The next page is the first floor. And then the next page, you'll see there, maybe this is the first floor because, no, this is the second floor, and the upper balcony for the gym. And then the top. So, and as a layperson, I think my immediate sense was going to be with this report that Hadley was going to come back with some issues, but the ventilation had been addressed there, and it is in good shape. As I said, it is in acceptable shape right now. They just basically have yellow and orange. And again, this office area is in the administrative offices. This had been broken up. And the proposed quarantine area is in Hadley is right here. Again, it would be near a main entry. And so I can see people's hands popping up from the school committee, but I don't have that screen open. So Amy, if you want to direct me to have a school committee question. And
Well,
if you
so my question is, it's curious to me that now that we've looked at only two of the schools, that both of them, the nurses' offices were both in red.
Because they've been chopped up. They're not in red. Those are orange. That's orange.
Orange, okay.
So, and that's because these spaces have been chopped up and walls have been built to divide spaces. So there could be a time where this entire office suite was one and it's been chopped up. There has been no red at Clark or at Hadley right now. That's an orange color. But can you monitor what school committee members want to ask questions? I think it popped up that Ted's wanted to ask a question.
Okay.
I'm good. I was looking at the quarantine room. I'm fine. Thank you.
Okay. I just can't even put the gallery up and the participants up. So
it's hard to do 9 things at the same time.
Lately, it's even harder. So here was our surprise. Stanley School. Stanley School was the only school in the district that had red areas and red spaces. And so here's the basement at Stanley. Our art room and our OT room that are in the basement are in green. The old building at Stanley, 2 floors are red, are the only in the district that are red. The conference room and the new guidance, these were just built out of that library. And so if I go up to the next floor, the 4 classroom spaces in the old building are also not usable. And then we have some broken down offices on this floor as well. The side room, the speech room, these are all little spaces that were created that I can say in particular, this space was one big area when I was principal over at Stanley. And it's been chopped up because we don't have proper learning environments for our students. Now, one thing Mrs. Huntley was quick to point out to me today, and if I want to find a silver lining in this news, is that even though there are 8 classroom spaces, it's affecting 4 general ed classroom spaces because they have a music room over there, which used to be done in the library. They have a literacy specialist in that area that we're moving more push in. So even though there are 8 classrooms, it looks like, there are really only 4 general ed classrooms that would have to be relocated.
For classes.
So that, because I was looking at it as 8, and she was very quick to correct me, thankfully, that, there are some programs over there and not general ed classrooms that they could do different things with. But this is the area that is red, the only red area in the district. And one thing I want to point out is that, again, it's not saying these rooms are unsafe. It is saying that in a pandemic, there is not adequate ventilation in there to follow the guidelines, the health guidelines in a pandemic. And it's saying they're not good for in-person use. It doesn't mean nobody can be in there. It's just saying that in-person education under a pandemic is not best. And if you'll note, we were talking about this today, that first floor end room that has been made into a music room might be a perfect space for a quarantine room, because they could get an exhaust fan on the side of the building and really come out this door and be picked up and not have to go through the entire building. Now, granted, the nurse's office is over here, but these are proposed, and they're just thinking of quick exits, exterior walls, and away from everyone else.
So Pam, to be clear, you said that it only affects 4 classes, but no, like the music or whatever else is happening, nothing will be happening. No class instruction will be happening in any of those rooms.
Right. It would be music on a cart. Music would be pushed in person. The literacy specialist would be pushed in, and their office spaces would have to be relocated, whether they're in the cafeteria or the cafegimatorium here. And also the library with the mitigation here could be usable space. We're going to have to create other spaces within the building to accommodate those classes.
And by pushing in, you mean that those specialists will go into their regular classrooms?
Correct. Yeah. Okay. So that was, to me, surprising news, because I expected it to be Hadley. Swampscott Middle School has 1 shaded pink area, and it was almost predictable, the band room. I know Mrs. Bowler, her room is so hot all the time. So here is the middle school, and it is the ground floor. And let's see if I can go here. So it's the bottom floor of the building, the very bottom.
So that's like the tech room.
So this is where the maintenance department office is, the tech room. Here's the cafeteria. You'll notice that is usable space that we could potentially get groups of students in to educate. If you come up to the first floor, the main floor, here is the band room. And that is a proposed quarantine area. There's a room off of that they're talking about potential use here. In addition, it's interesting to note that the superintendent's conference room is yellow. The student support services is here, but there are 2 offices here, Mrs. Raymond's and our team chairs here. My office is yellow. And certainly they're just things that can be improved. But there's been, if you recall, there's been lots of chop up in these areas. Remember, these were all classrooms at some time when this was a high school. But
to your point, that we're not looking to put a classroom into the student services office.
Correct.
So it's okay to continue to work there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely. There is not, absolutely.
But across the hall where you see those 3 preschool classrooms, those have to be taken care of.
And so let's look at that. That says letter D. Space requires louver and wall or door to transfer the air for exhaust and or ventilation. So once again, rather than drilling and putting a grate, or cutting out, sawing and putting a grate in there for ventilation, we're talking about door exchange airflow. And so those could be very easily mitigated. Not concerns there. And then if you go to the next floor, The second floor of the middle school, again, you'll see all these spaces of green. But again, if you look at letter E here, it says, again, they're recommending 11 occupants. So that would be 1 teacher and 10 students. And we know that we have classes that have more enrollment than that, but we also have our principals looking at, of those classes and those students in those classes, who has selected remote. And that's going to bring your numbers down, and that's going to help you divide in our next phase, the hybrid model. And then finally, I'll show you the high school.
Please be all green.
It's all green. It's a pleasure to look at. Well, I shouldn't say that. There's orange that's still being investigated, but we're still being looked at. So here's the main entry. This, I don't know if I can zoom in anymore, is the health suite. Okay, so yeah, this is the health suite right here. And I think that could have been that they couldn't get in there. There were some spaces that were orange that basically the reason they were still orange is because they hadn't been in there to evaluate it yet. But here is the proposed quarantine room or isolation room down here. There is further discussion going on with Mr. Kohut and Max Casper regarding this, but this is 1 floor of the high school. The next floor. And the next little wing.
So that's every single building that we have. We have the nurses' space as orange.
That's correct.
But
Basically, because
does it just mean they couldn't get in? Is that all it means?
it means that they, in some instances, they could get in, and in other instances, they left them as orange because we know that those are heightened spaces that we want to really do a deeper dive on what was going on those rooms.
Okay.
And the factor of the isolation rooms as well. So they are consistently orange.
But there's not any kind of ominous pattern for why they're orange. I just,
Because it seems it.
It's not.
Okay.
If I could circle back to Mrs. Wright's question earlier, the one big unknown is what it would cost to fix the ventilation issues at Stanley. And so we are going out to bid for, it's almost like a 2-phase project. The first phase of it is to go through and confirm all of our understanding, verification of operation of all the univents and the controls that are in place, and then do the testing and balancing that the airflow, the cubic per foot, the CFM, I can't think what the acronym is for that, that it's actually producing that much movement of air. The Stanley School is a different beast because the ventilation system that's in place there is a gravity ventilation system, which I'd never even heard of before. And so it's that old. And so it would need to be really looked at, and it would be, the scope of work from that would be a capital project, not something that we could do immediately.
So you're talking about the red rooms in Stanley?
Correct.
Okay. So that we're not looking to get those mitigated in time for school start? Or are we?
Correct, we are not.
Okay. Ted, I see your hand raised.
So, I mean, obviously it's a just huge amount of information, but on like a stepping stone, which I appreciate, is how does this roll? So we have Max, we have Garrett, right? Do we have a pecking order like the principal, the nurse? How are we taking this data and it's different for every building?
The facilities, so what we're asking of the building principals is to work with their teachers to set up the spaces, to set up the safety signage, to think about their class lists, think about the classroom setups. This work is stemming from our director of facilities. And I said to him today, I couldn't be more grateful in the timing of his hiring and appointment, because he has really led this work significantly. I don't know where we would be. And Martha Seibert's right by his side in terms of these meetings. Now, Garrett is the liaison between Max and the building principals. Garrett is still that intermediary. He's still leading the work. He's still monitoring the custodians. But one of the things I was talking to my building administrators about today is they really have to work with their building custodians. Garrett and Max are taxed with bigger picture items, and that's doing this mitigation and hiring the vendors and hiring the contractors. So the custodians at the building level, along with the principals, are going to have to manage those classrooms, manage whatever additional or extraneous furniture needs to come out of there. But the hierarchy is that Max is overseeing this with Ms. Seibert. Garrett is working in between, and I get informed as we go along, if that answers it.
And what about those 4 classrooms at Stanley? I mean, every inch of that school is already being used by 3 different, for 3 different things. Does the principal there work with the principals at other schools to see what's available?
Mrs. Huntley has it all under control. She's
Okay,
been very
I like to hear
confident
that.
today that she can manage. She was very confident. And I trust that she will make decisions that are good. Now, remember, we're not talking about September 16th, and that's part of the reason. All of these things have to be mitigated. We have to figure the class assignments at the elementary levels have to go out. Then they have the data of who is going to be fully remote. That brings their numbers down. What is cohort A and cohort B going to be when we go into hybrid? All of these logistical items are being worked out as we speak, actually.
So perhaps when we get closer to the middle of September, we can have her report in here. I'm sure
will be
parents
informed
would
along
like
the
to
way.
hear.
School committee will be kept informed along the way.
All right. I know parents would be very anxious to hear what the solutions are.
Can I ask a question?
Me too.
Pam,
Yeah.
is there any discussion with middle school and high school administration about starting hybrid a little earlier, since those buildings seem to be ready to go? I mean, I get elementary school and you have to sort of start them all together because everyone's doing the same curriculum for remote and hybrid, cohesiveness and flexibility. But is there some chance that the middle school and high school can start a little quicker? Or is that, I mean, I'm sure that's a negotiation kind of thing, but also I don't know what you're talking about.
You don't know
Who's talking about?
Is anyone talking about that? I mean,
we still have the issues with staff at this point.
Okay, enough said.
Is it fair to say that building wise, they could open earlier?
Building wise, according to these maps, yes. The logistics of staggered times, classrooms, entering and exiting, signage, all of that is still going on right now.
Right.
Could they start before the October 26th? Is it possible? Yes.
But so I'm just asking, like, the plan can continue to be fluid, maybe at least for those levels. I mean, more so than the elementary school plan is, because we have sort of like hardware issues, not software issues, so to speak.
Yeah.
I think that should be, discussed.
We're open to anything. And as I said, discussions, I felt like today we had a lot of puzzle pieces and they're starting to come together. I'm not saying again tonight we have all of the answers. We're considering everything. And so that is definitely it's an option that we're open to. We've always said that one size doesn't fit all, and that may be the case in this situation.
Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah.
This was the phrase that Max Casper used that I thought was hysterical today. Clark currently has minimal projects, is a minimal project with multiple contractors mitigating multiple issues. So those yellow spaces were being mitigated even as we were meeting today. And everything that can be addressed with electricians or plumbers or whoever is being addressed right now. And that was where I was going to speak to you about the walkthrough sample of Tuesday, where They were talking about airflow between spaces, and instead of cutting a hole in the wall, we were talking about using the door. And then Ms. Seibert just spoke to the fact that developing that scope of work meeting tomorrow, and that was for the verification of operations of all univents and controls, and testing the univents for the CFMs and balancing whatever that means. So I do want to remind you that as I started this presentation, the Director of Facilities, Max Casper, will provide another update. He feels like he'll have a lot of information about the scope of the work and that bid that's going out to bid to bring in mechanical contractors to start doing all of this work. And I will take any questions, additional questions.
So Pam, can I ask you, just in the beginning, the occupational health nurse,
Yes.
who is Julie on the hiring of that? And what are we looking at a full-time employee?
We're looking at a full-time position. We are, I have some assistance in putting together and tweaking the job description right now from some medical professionals. And then I will be putting together an interview committee that will be made up of medical professionals along with human resources. Yes.
And Dr. D'Souza, the district doctor, could she be on that, or?
If she's available.
Okay.
That's,
thank you.
Ted, I want to speak to that real quick because that's a name that keeps popping up. And I think that this has probably shown us, in my opinion, that that's probably a, I don't want to say a relationship that needs to be evaluated, but we pay a pittance for that role, and it has been very narrow over the years. And obviously, COVID has changed everything. But probably once we get somebody like the occupational nurse would be able to, you know, as they're devising policies, would be, I mean, I would hope to look to them for recommendations about what further we need in terms of having medical staff available.
So Dr. D'Souza was away and did respond to a communication saying that she'd be more than happy and she looks forward to reviewing our plan as well as Nahant's plan. So it is a relationship that needs to be built and strengthened. And it's something that, a shout out to Emily Silly when she came on board as lead nurse, really was trying to cultivate. So it's an ongoing challenge. With that, I'd like permission to go on to the athletic update.
Yes, please.
Let me go back. And Ms. Seibert, Mr. Kohat, and Mrs. Farley and I met today. We have had several meetings over the last couple of weeks and have been kept up to date with the challenges that have been faced. And I know that families are concerned with the vote that took place with the Northeastern Conference. So I turn it to you, Mrs. Farley.
Thanks, Pam. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm hoping to be able to give everybody a lot of information that they might need right now as far as the vote goes, the plans that we have at this point going forward with athletics, and just some reasoning behind a lot of the stuff that we're planning and decisions that we're making. So that's hopefully what everybody gets out of this. So we can head to the next slide, Pam. So what everybody's seeing here are the dates that were put forth by the MIAA Board of Directors. They've taken the school year, which is normally, as everybody knows, a three-season year, and they've turned it into 4 seasons to try to give people the flexibility of getting all sports in versus having to cancel a season or cancel particular sports in a season like we had to do last spring. So that's why you'll see they have traditional fall sports, the ones that aren't considered high risk, starting September 18th and ending November 20th. And then you can see it go through from there. The so-called float season that you'll hear me talk about a lot, or the flex season, is the additional season that they put in for the fall sports that districts may not be able to have for various reasons or that are high risk. So that's where you see all that. Okay, next slide. So the MIAA guidelines that just came out, one of the biggest things that you'll be hearing about is they've taken away the out of season coaching rule. So now all of our coaches have the option of coaching our student athletes out of season between September 18th and July 3rd. So where you would usually have captain's practices, or you would have different teams that would have somebody else come in, whether it's colleges to run preseason clinics and stuff like that, our coaches can now work with our student athletes, which is a really big change. So that's one thing that was come up with by the board of directors. The other big thing with MIAA guidelines is that if you are going to have a season, they want you playing within your league. If you can't play within your league for some reason, then you have to go and you have to ask the district athletic committee for permission to then play within your district. Our district has 4 leagues in it. 2 of us have already voted not to have athletics this fall as leagues. The other 3 are still pending. So we would have to go and get permission anyways, even if we wanted to go outside our own league and play. And then lastly, and I want to spend a little bit of time on this one, is that all the different sport committees at the MIAA, so every sport that the MIAA sponsors has a committee that's made up of principals and athletic directors and so forth that come up with rules, regulations, guidelines, stuff like that. Each one of those committees has now been tasked with looking at the way that their sport works and coming up with modifications that fit within all of the EEA, DESC, and CDC guidelines for COVID. And then sending those to the sports medicine committee, who has to then approve them and then bring them back for further approval and see if the sport is even possible. These have not been released yet. Well, they haven't been approved yet, but just some of the rumblings that I'm hearing, for example, no purposeful contact in any sport. No contact at all. You have to avoid contact any way that you can. You have to try to stay 6 feet away from all the other people on the field. Masks are going to be worn at all times. If your mask gets wet because you're sweating or it's raining or from you breathing so hard while you're running, you have to leave the field and get a new mask. If you come within 6 feet of an official, it's an automatic ejection from the game. And for soccer, for example, if you're ejected from a game, you're out for the rest of that game, 2 more games. You get ejected twice in a season and you're done any athletics for a whole year in athletics. You can't, there's not going to be slide tackling allowed. So goalies can't come out and challenge somebody that has a breakaway. They have to stand there in the net and hope for the best. They don't want you touching the ball with your hands, even for throw-ins. So throw-ins are gone. You have to stay 6 feet apart so you can't build a wall. So when the other team has an indirect kick and they're going for a goal, you can't make a wall to try to stop that. You're not allowed to head the ball. If you head the ball, the other team gets an indirect kick. And these are just some of the things that have been thrown around. And that's just one sport that we're talking about. And all of these sports are going through these modifications. So most of these sports are not going to be what they normally are. When you talk about, are we going to play? Are we not going to play? They're going to be basically glorified practices, if you will. In my opinion, soccer almost becomes a game of keep away, to be honest with you. So just to kind of put that in perspective, is that the sport will not be played with typical rules. There will be drastic changes in all the rules and what is allowed to happen and not allowed to happen. So next slide, Pam. Thank you. Some of the challenges that the league faced when we talk about the vote that the league took. 5 of our NE schools at the time that we took the vote were in the red. And what that means, if you're red on the COVID map, is that not only can you not play competitions, but your school's not even allowed to practice. So out of 12 teams, 5 were red and pending. 10 of us out of the 12 were going remote at that time. And Danvers and Peabody were the only 2 that were hybrid, and those are still, I think they're still throwing things around there from what I'm reading in the media. Transportation was a huge consideration across the board. in a regular season without COVID, it is a real challenge to get enough buses to provide transportation for all of our teams. Our teams are late for many competitions, not just Swampscott, everybody, because the buses can't get to us in time. They have to do their regular runs. At this point, a lot of the transportation companies have furloughed or laid off their drivers, and they don't know that they can get them back to drive. Not to mention, we're going to need double the buses in order to get our student athletes to where they need to go because of the way that the social distancing has to be on the buses. So that's a huge issue. The other issue is the availability of officials. I can tell you that the average age of a field hockey official is right around 60 years old. They're mostly retired educators or other retired people and so forth that are officiating. Are they going to want to be out there with masks on trying to run up and down the field when they're considered to be in a high risk category? So that was a big one. And the other thing that's difficult is all the COVID protocols if somebody tests positive. Trying to contact trace, if you've had 3 games in a week, and those teams have all played other teams, and then all of a sudden, 6 days in, you get a phone call that somebody on one of those teams has tested positive. You're trying to contact trace, you're trying to worry about quarantining. And if somebody in your program tests positive, you have to shut down your program anyways and move it to that float season anyway. That's the rule. So at that point, where do you go with that? Some other things that came up with officials, concerns that some officials might have, they have to all have electronic whistles now because it's pretty hard to whistle through the mask. They don't want to fill out paperwork to get paid because of the virus. So we would have to then buy a subscription to Arbiter Pay or something along those lines to be able to do all of that electronically. And the other thing is they said if for some reason there was an altercation on the field, they would not in any way try to stop the altercation, that they would stay away from it because of the virus. And lastly, as soon as the game ends, they would be departing the field immediately as to avoid contact with everybody. One of the other rules is that you can only have up to 50 people watching the game. So we would have to provide somebody to stand at the gate. And when that 51st person came, even if it was a parent of a senior, we would have to say, I'm really sorry, but you have to leave. We need you to get in the car and leave because we've already reached our 50-person capacity. So these are just some of the things that have popped up, just as we started talking about this vote and how difficult it is to pull off competitions. There's nothing all of us want more than to get our student athletes on the field. That was first and foremost, but the more we dug into it, the more we realized how difficult it is going to be. Pam, next slide, if you don't mind. So what are we doing for our student athletes? So moving the fall season to the float season as the NEC, as we did as a league, is the first thing. We've come to decide in our administrative meeting that we are not going to be able to offer middle school sports at this point in time. All fall athletes are going to have the option to practice with their team during the prescribed season, which is September 18th to November 30th, if they choose. All the COVID guidelines for us when we talk about practicing with teams and so forth will be developed in combination with the administration, our athletic trainer, and the Board of Health in town to make sure that everybody is abiding by and we're keeping everybody safe. Practice schedules are going to be made up by myself, and we're not to make sure that they will absolutely not conflict with school hours. That is not going to be happening at all. And we're going to make sure that everybody is rotating through, that it's equitable. And like I said, our athletic trainer will be there making sure that all the guidelines are being upheld and that everybody is safe. We also talked about self-certifying via a Google form on their phone. So as soon as right before they come to practice, they have to self-certify on that Google form. Coaches will be taking attendance, so we know exactly who is in attendance at the practices in the case that we do have to contact trace. As asked by all the different guidelines, we'll be breaking the team up into cohorts of 10. So 10 people will be working together in practice, and we'll be staggering when they arrive at practice. So if, for instance, if field hockey is going to practice from 3:30 to 5, the first group of 10 may arrive at the field at 3:30. Group number 2 might not arrive at the field until 3:40, 3:45. and they'll have different stations and different things to do so that they're socially distancing and working together. And they will also be dismissed from the field in a staggered fashion, and they'll have to leave the field immediately. There'll be no locker rooms available. There cannot be any kind of locker rooms or anything like that available at all. So those are just some of the things that we're looking at this point. The other thing, let me see here. The teams, the winter and the spring teams, traditional winter and spring teams can also practice out of season. They've always been allowed to do that. The only caveat to that is in the past, they haven't been allowed to have their coach there. So if they choose to do that, they can still have a coach there. Some teams may do that, some may not. They can have a coach there and they can still do that. We won't be monitoring that. That'll be on their own time because it's not during their season. It's just that the only difference is now they're allowed to have their coach there if they should choose. And then lastly is that no student athlete is mandated to participate in this fall practice season whatsoever. It is totally voluntary. It does not impact whether they decide to play in the competitive season, what team they make in the competitive season, or anything like that. It's something that we want to offer our student athletes as a way to get them out, get them some exercise, and also the social emotional health, get them out with their teammates and with their coaches to be able to work together and kind of get that going. Next slide, please, Pam. So how will it all work? This is still a work in motion here, but right now this is what we're seeing and it's still being tweaked a little bit. Parents and guardians for the fall season only, for all of our fall sports, will register their student athletes on Family ID, just like they would if we were going to have a traditional season. Family ID will be launched on August 31st. Valid physical exams are still required, and the Department of Public Health is not relenting on the 13-month requirement. So they have to have had a physical, even though we're in the middle of the pandemic and most things with telehealth, they have to have had an in-person physical within the last 13 months. So that's something we'll be communicating clearly to parents. Without that physical, they're not going to be able to participate. We are not going to charge a user fee for this fall session since we are not incurring costs for transportation and officials and all that kind of stuff. We have all the equipment that we need to practice as far as goals and all that. We're going to be asking students to bring their own ball and all that kind of stuff to make sure that we're being careful in that respect. Practice schedules will be posted on our schools, which is northeasternmass.org, which is the website that we've always used for schedules. But instead of game schedules, we'll have all the practice schedules up there so that people can see exactly when their teams are going to be on the field and what field they'll be on. Like I said, our athletic trainer will be there to assist with not only injuries, but with all the COVID guideline compliance and all that sort of thing. I talked about the fact that our student athletes will be in cohorts within their teams. And then the self-certification will be required daily and will be online or available on their smartphones if need be. Next slide. So next steps for us as we see it is to develop COVID guidelines and the process for monitoring and enforcing those guidelines. I'm planning, obviously, meeting with coaches to go over all of this information, go over process, go over expectations, and so on and so forth. Schedules and registration will be published for all the fall sports and practices. And then to launch the Family ID website and get that going so that people can begin to register as soon as possible.
Thank you, Mrs. Farley. Mr. Kohut, did you have anything to add? As I know you were at that meeting as well. Mr. Kohut, do you have anything? We can't hear you. Strange. You can't get it to work? Okay. Okay. So I guess I will throw it to committee questions.
So I have a couple of questions, and I want to start with a caveat that I am not sporty, nor is it what I generally know anything about. My first question is, who is our league? You had said before that there were a number that were red. I'm assuming that's Lynn and Salem, but who else is in our league?
So there's 12 different schools in our league. Masconomet, who's brand new, Danvers, Beverly, Winthrop, Lynn English, Lynn Classical, Saugus. Who am I missing? Gloucester, Peabody, Marblehead, obviously. Then there's us, and I don't know if I said Beverly already.
All right. Okay, that was just a curiosity.
Mhm.
I appreciate the business, the discussion about the transportation. I know that that was really eye-opening for the school committee when you provided us an evaluation of the true cost of sports. So knowing what's happening with busing in general, just for regular education, I can imagine the struggles that are here. My question is, it sounds to me like apart from, and this is why I say I'm not, sports isn't my thing. Sounds like apart from the official games, that there can be some semblance of a season insofar as the kids can get together, they can practice, and have all of those, have a lot of the things that are, that we need sports for. So I'm hoping that the coaches are all going to be receiving their stipends. No?
No.
So how do we get them to get to the field?
Well, I haven't had conversations with them, but I will tell you that every coach has always said, I would love to be able to coach my student athletes out of season. It would make it so much better. They would have such a better experience if it was me working with them versus somebody else. I wish we didn't have this rule because a lot of states don't have that rule. Massachusetts is super strict with it compared to a lot of other states. So it's my hope that the coaches will see this as a very positive thing. They wouldn't get paid for out of season coaching normally anyway. And I can tell you that most of our coaches, when our student athletes are involved in a summer league for something, a lot of our coaches go and they sit and watch. They just can't coach. They're spending the time there anyway. My thought is if we do have a coach that has a big problem with it, that doesn't want to coach without a stipend, then we always have the plan of what we've done in the past, which is a parent who's knowledgeable of it, or something along those lines, which of course we go through the proper channels and have them Corey fingerprinted and make sure everything's okay and so on and so forth. But that would be the backup plan.
But what
Can
about,
Can I just add that part of the reason the coaches wouldn't be paid is because if this sport goes to the floating season, they will be paid for that season. And we're not charging user fees now from the students. So there's no money to, you talk about transportation officials costs, but also the coaches' stipends. And if there is going to be a full season, during that floating season, they would be paid their stipend.
okay, so that sort of answers the question. So say for example, this season that, this first fall season, not the floating fall season, if soccer would have been played, that soccer coach will still get their stipend or no?
So they won't get their stipend for this fall. They'll get their stipend in the season when the competitions happen. So all of our fall sports are going to happen in the floating season, which is February 22nd to April 25th. So they'll get their stipends then for that season. They won't get their stipends for this practice season, so to speak.
But I think it's important, Amy, to hear what Mrs. Farley's saying in that these off-season practices have happened anyway.
Yeah.
But the MIAA is allowing the actual coaches to do it.
It's not so much the off-season practices that I'm thinking about, but the ones that it is the season.
Well, they will be paid for that.
Okay.
So think of it this way, the competitions for all of our fall sports that should actually be going on right now, if there wasn't a pandemic, they'd already be practicing and so forth. So this would be their season, but it's not because it's been so-called postponed to the floating season. So they are off season right now.
Okay. So when they do go back and play, they will be paid. I just want to make sure that we're not, life is not easy for a lot of people financially. And absolutely. I want to make sure that we're not asking anybody to do anything for free. My other question is, if they are together as a team and playing, can they scrimmage? And can they scrimmage with either, here with other students, or like say with Marblehead, and like they can get a ride over?
No, scrimmages aren't allowed. If you scrimmage, it's actually considered a violation and you would forfeit your real season. And if you're playing a sport that's in the moderate, categorized as moderate, which would be basically everything except for golf and cross country, to be honest with you, and obviously football and cheer are high risk, but anything moderate, you can only scrimmage with a maximum of, I think it's 14 people on the field at a time. So what it would be is it would be inter-squad scrimmages, and there'd be short-sided scrimmages so that your cohorts are still together, and the coaches would make the cohorts appropriately, so that keeping scrimmages in mind, so that you have the right amount of defenders and you have a goalkeeper, and so that it's made up strategically so that everybody is able to participate when they get with that. What we're hoping to see is a lot of conditioning, because a lot of, some of our student athletes haven't gotten the same amount of conditioning they usually would when we're not in the middle of a pandemic. And then a lot of work on fundamentals and short-sided games. So you can almost see it as prep for the upcoming season that's coming up.
So I know that I have had questions about this from others. What about kids who are getting ready for college? This is a major part of their college, their resume, and they're now competing against kids in other districts and other places where they are having teams.
So I have actually spoken to 3 different college coaches about this, and they've all said to me that with the modifications that are going to be made, they're not even going to be bothering to come out and see high school games, because they're not going to be able to evaluate and see the things that they normally would want to see with all the modifications.
Not just here, but sort of broadly.
And most college coaches, when you talk to them, they don't come to regular season games. They come to the postseason, because that's when they're seeing the competition. That's when they're seeing the higher level play. And the MIAA has canceled all postseason play for both the fall season and the float season. So there is none of that going on.
So I've now officially asked more about sports than I have in my entire life. So I'll turn it over to the rest of my team.
I see Ted up.
Ellie,
Done.
I think you do a great job. And if I have negative comments, they're not directed to yourself. I think the world of you. I need to understand, because the MIAA, in my opinion, I follow them. One day it's this, the next day it's something else. I get it, it's fluid. But say for just conversation that there was a district that didn't agree with what they're saying. I don't understand how we're at the point we are right now. I get that the districts around us are in the red. Do we pay the MIAA any money?
We do. To belong to the association, everybody does. Well, every school that belongs to the MIAA does pay dues.
Okay. I'll talk offline on that. I think that I get it, but I think for the parents that are out there, whether you have a senior that's a captain or I don't know if I 100% follow or agree with the MIAA and how they're releasing the information. That's just me, but we have the kids that are academic. We have the kids in the middle school that now aren't going to have any sports. You have kids out there that love the sport aspect, that's their only reason they come to school. And I would love to talk about what that fee is and what we're paying, because this isn't the first time I've felt disappointed by them.
Absolutely. Pam, you're muted.
I know. Dennis, is your volume working now? No. Karen?
Thanks. So if this first period of school is going to just be practice, what are people registering for on 9/18? Are they registering to practice, or are these just kids that are already on a staff?
No. Anyone who would have normally wanted to register for a particular sport and wants to participate in this season that's coming up starting on September 18th would register. You know, part of the registration reasons is that we need to have their medical information if God forbid somebody were to get hurt or ill while they were with the coaches. You know, we need to know allergies, all that sort of stuff. But also if we need to do contact tracing, we need to make sure we have all that information as well. And then also we need to know numbers so that we can make appropriate cohorts and all that other sort of stuff.
So even though it's not a regular competitive season, we're giving opportunities for students to partake in athletics through practices. And the district is involving themselves in the athletic department by doing what they would do for a competitive season, by having people register, by having the medical forms, by having the athletic trainers. So, you know, what the big piece, to summarize, the big piece is that the competition is gone. But with the rules that and the adjustments that Mrs. Farley was explaining to us today about what kids can and can't do and what's going to come down in terms of adjustments, it's like they're going to be penalizing kids for playing sports the way they've always played them. If they make mistakes and they touch something or they, you know, lunge for something, and that's concerning.
No, understood. I mean, if the sport's going to be unrecognizable, then, you know, maybe they're better.
Can we not
Or they
pay our
learn to play a
dues?
new sport.
I just
like,
wanted
it's not a new sport, but like if field hockey is different, then field hockey is different and you learn to play it differently.
It's
very just be practicing. I get it. Like that makes sense to me. You know, they can condition and they can be better later. But I just wanted to make sure who was registering, because you know you can have freshmen that weren't already on the team, and so you know things like that. Or
and most of our coaches have already been in contact with the incoming freshmen as far as reaching out and seeing who might be interested in playing. And a lot of those freshmen have been participating in captains practices and so on and so forth. So we've captured a lot of them.
Okay.
But, and Amy, I did just want to address, you know, you were talking about if you play it differently, you play it differently. The problem is that when the kids have been playing a sport since they were 5 years old, it's second nature. Like for me, I played soccer from 5 years old all through college. If I was to get out there even now in my old age and a ball was coming towards me, I would automatically head the ball because it's just what you've always done. It's part of the game. So to try to program yourself in the middle of a game running down the field to duck out of the way. And if I do head it, then my team's getting penalized.
I think my point is more that the kids would rather, I'm guessing, that the kids would rather be out there learning how to play differently than not playing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want that to be a reason for not playing, you know, is that it looks so different, you know, because these kids want to just play. And if they're not doing it through organized sports, they're going to be doing it out there on their own.
But that's why this is a happy compromise. We're giving them opportunities to belong. And I'll say it again, Kelly thought about their social, emotional, and their physical well-being. And that's the decision. That's why we've made the decision that we've made. Suzanne was trying to raise her hand and then
But I'm not done. I'm not done. I had more.
Sorry.
Karen.
So also I wanted to ask, what's the Board of Health's reasoning for not accepting telehealth well visits as certification?
I don't know, to be honest with you. I'm not on the sports medicine committee at the MIAA. The MIAA has tried on a few different occasions, especially with the pandemic, to say, can we leave their physicals, that if they get a physical, if their physical is going to expire, if the 13 months is going to hit on October 1st and they're in the middle of the season, can't we just consider them okay for the whole season, for the remainder of that season? And they won't allow it.
Who's they?
The Department of Public Health.
Swampscott?
State Department?
No, statewide, not Swampscott. They're the ones that mandate it. It has to be 13 months, and the mandate that has come down is that it absolutely cannot be a telehealth physical. It has to be an in-person physical.
Okay, and then lastly, how likely or confident are you that the other seasons will actually happen and be competitive, or that you're going to have to make the same call?
I have no way of knowing. It all depends on what happens with the virus and everything. So I have no way of even making, I'm praying that they absolutely do. It bothers me as much as it bothers any parent. I mean, I have a high schooler who's missing out on his junior year of football. I have a senior in college that's missing her last soccer season, missed her junior year of softball. I mean, I'm dealing with it from a parental standpoint too, but the problem is that we just don't know. I have 2 college kids who are both remote this fall. One of them for the beginning of her freshman year, which is a real bummer. But it's the virus, and I honestly, I don't know. I can tell you, I have my own feeling. Just my feeling is that schools that have chosen to start this fall season, I have a feeling that you're going to see them have to stop partway through and switch over to the float season. That's my gut feeling on it. We'll see what happens. But I don't see, our high school kids are so passionate about playing. I don't see them scoring a goal or doing something great and not running and jumping and hugging each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? I don't think they're going to do it purposely to break the rules and not be safe. I think it's just so much emotion built into it.
Well, I mean, the fact that you can't get within 6 feet of the official, I mean, I just don't know how you would keep track of that. It seems like that would
and it's going to depend on that official and their mood that day. And,
right.
It's just so many variables.
Okay, so I want to recognize Suzanne, and then Suzanne and John.
Me? Sorry, me?
Yeah.
Is the float season, does that look like regular sport? Like when that finally happens, are those traditional rules?
That's what we're all praying for, yes.
Okay.
Or at a minimum, Suzanne, that the modifications would be much less than what we're looking at this fall, because the hope is that the pandemic is much more under control at this point.
So do kids have to register to play the practice season in order to, if it gets switched to the float season, or can they just register when the float season starts?
So so they would have to, if they're going to participate in the practice season right now, they would register for that now. Then if they're going to do a winter sport, they'll register for the winter sport like they always would.
Right.
Then if they want to play in the float season, they're going to register for that. And then if they're going to play a spring sport, they'll register for that. So instead of registering for 3 separate athletic seasons, you're registering for 4 separate athletic seasons, because that's how it's been divided up now.
Right. So you were saying any coach can coach anyone at any time?
Correct.
So can the basketball season start now?
No. So
like that really can't start until the traditional
correct. Well, they can do out of season stuff like they traditionally would, like they do out of season stuff all the time, even before the pandemic.
But they're not registering as.
We're not involving ourselves in that.
Correct. We're not involving ourselves in the winter or the spring stuff that's going on, because they would already be out of season anyway.
Right.
The only difference to that is that the coach can now be involved in that out of season coaching.
Are we letting them use indoor facilities? Or are we encouraging, pick up on Phillips Park?
Everything is outside. Even our volleyball team will be practicing outside, and I'll be working with our coach to figure out how best to do that, whether it's bringing volleyball stanchions outside or whatever that may look like. We're going to make sure that they have a great experience, and that we're staying within the guidelines and keeping them safe.
Maybe it's beach volleyball season. They can use the one at Phillips Park.
There we go.
Okay, my last question is the middle school. I mean, I know you spoke about maybe using parents or someone else's coaches. Is that something we can continue to discuss for the middle school for those kids? And for, even if they're remote, to come to the middle school at a certain time during the day to kind of do some organized thing for them, with parent coaches if you can't have, or teacher coaches or something. I don't know.
I think the hardest part about that is in the the fall for middle school, we have cross country and we have field hockey. That's what we offer.
Right.
We already have, youth sports that have canceled their seasons and are going to clinic type of things because of the
Right.
pandemic. Our cross country course is not suitable for a lot of the modifications that are going to be made, such as staying 10 feet apart at the start line, every single kid, staggered starts with 3 minutes in between the start. And our courses are also up and back. So when that first person is going and looping around and coming back, now you're going to have kids passing each other, breathing heavy, running a road race. And the paths are not wide enough for them to socially distance by any stretch of the imagination.
And the same thing for, I mean, how about just like the fun stuff, like we're talking about with the high school, and just practice seasons and just doing, taking kids out and, running
Drills.
on the roads or something. I'm just trying to think, we just keep talking about the social emotional thing. And that's this is so hard for these kids. You see them all over town just wanting to be together, right? And even the kids that are being great, and sitting at the beach far apart, or I see them at Linscott Park in these big circles, whatever. And then of course you see the other kids, not being like that, but they just really do want to be together. And I'm concerned that, we're dividing them up in their cohorts by, alphabetically and things like that. And now we're saying it's okay to make different cohorts for sports. And I think if we're going to do that, then we should be doing it at the middle school too. We just have to be offering those kids something.
Mm-hmm.
I volunteer. I'm happy to coach someone after school. I'm happy to go on a run with some kids. I don't know. It just feels like, it feels like
Those middle schoolers need it.
they do. It's just, this is so tough for everyone. And yeah, especially when they're still remote, if they can ride their bikes to the middle school. I'm happy to do a mountain biking, like that after school biking club and take a bunch of kids biking. I don't know, it just seems like I'm just hoping maybe Mr. Kalishman or the middle school, I know they used to do that, that period. I don't know, just throwing it out there that it's unfortunate. That's all I got.
Could we encourage parents to reach out to Mr. Kalishman to organize those things separately, almost like a club after school, Pamela?
This will need further discussion. Either we're going to do it through the athletic department like we always do. I think right now, honestly, the principals have enough to do to try to figure out their academic and the curriculum and the delivery of instruction. I think this has to be an offline conversation with the leadership team about whether or not this is something the athletic department wants to take on.
What about like a PTO or boosters or something?
Yeah, I will add, I know a lot of parents who are very anxious to do what Suzanne is offering and will jump in to coach or monitor or whatever. But I respect that you want to do this offline. So, okay. John?
Yeah, thanks, Amy. And hi, Kelly. So as the parent of a middle schooler, Suzanne actually picked up one of my questions. I had a couple. Just to see what other options might be available for the kids. And it sounds like there are some good ideas that have been thrown out here. So, I'd like to see what comes of that because, as I've heard some of the conversations here, kids you see them walking around town, they're dying to do stuff. So, I think if there's something that could be done, I think that would be terrific, especially, also have a high schooler, and I think the middle schooler might say, hey, how come they get to do something and I don't? So, I see that up close and personal. So my other question was more around, you were talking about some of the rules about, the example you used was, come within 6 feet of the official and you could be expelled from the game. I'm just curious, is that a zero tolerance thing? Is this like written down that if that happens, you're out, or is this more recommendation, or there's flexibility on this thing?
So the official rules haven't been disseminated yet, approved and all that, but that's the buzz. That's definitely one of them that's out there. You know, and if you've seen a high school soccer game, it's very common that an official makes a call and one of the kids doesn't agree with it, and they turn around and they take a couple steps towards them and they always say, "Sir, come on, sir." Like, that's just what they always say. And if they do that, they're immediately going to be red carded. There's not going to be a warning with a yellow. It's going to be a red, because it's going to be seen as putting them in danger, is my assumption, with social distancing guidelines. And it's a big penalty to pay getting a red
The way you
card.
described it, it sounded very draconian,
it can
but
end there
you know,
with
I know there's
scholastic
safety
athletics for the
concerns,
whole
but
year.
you
Yeah.
know, it is.
I don't agree with that.
It is.
I don't agree. That kid makes a mistake. I don't agree with that.
Yeah, and I mean, what we'll see when the modifications are completely approved and come out, you know, it will be there. And I don't think soccer will be the only sport that has similar rules to that when it comes to approaching officials and so on and so forth. So.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Karen?
Another question. Are there any rules against a booster organization paying a coach to do a practice season?
No. That's been lifted as well. There used to be an MIA rule that boosters couldn't pay for out of season training and stuff, but now they are allowed to.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, Kelly.
Sure.
Thank you, Kelly. Dennis, I'm sorry we couldn't get you working.
That was a ruse. Kelly, I appreciate it. I know that is a hot topic and is going to remain so over the next couple of weeks. You know, we just got to get these kids out there.
No problem at all.
Thank you. Pam, are you all set with your superintendent's update?
I am.
Well, I am happy to say that we are going to turn this over to Martha Seibert, our business administrator, for a FY21 budget update. And I really appreciate your patience in our putting this off week after week. So the floor is yours.
Sure, I actually just texted the superintendent saying, really, it's only a few minutes before 9 o'clock, so I'm on track for a 9 o'clock start almost again, 3 weeks in a row. But I'm happy to give you this update. So
are we making you a co-host, Martha, so you can share your presentation?
We can. I don't know that I'm going to be able to see the screen with my glasses. I might turn my. I can't.
Would you like one of us to? Suzanne, can you do that? You're on mute, Suzanne.
All right, I'm trying to do it. Martha's revised budget. Okay. Can you see that?
Yep, just maximize the screen.
Yeah, hold on a second. Still not, I gotta open it. Right? It's not maximized, is it?
No, at the bottom, the little
I know, hold on, the plus.
magnifying glass over one. Yeah.
Is that good? Can you guys see it? Can you see it well enough?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, for some reason it's showing multiple at a time rather than just one.
Because it's a PDF and not.
I think because I think I have to download it. Hold on, sorry. I'm just downloading it because I think it'll work better.
Yeah, Pam, it's a PowerPoint on the
All right, there we go.
That's great. Thank you.
Okay.
Next screen.
Yes, please. All right. So, so we've all seen the headlines. We're all well aware that this pandemic has caused a lot of hardship, economic impact for everybody. This is just kind of to recap. The town took a proactive approach and revised their FY21 revenue budget, which resulted in revising our FY21 expense budget. And as a result of those reductions in revenue, the school department's operating budget from the general fund was reduced by $381,000. There was a state budget update back in July. And there is a special town meeting. There's talk of a special town meeting in the fall, but that date is still to be determined. If we move to the next slide, please.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. So the FY21 budget was reduced. The revenue budget was reduced by $1.2 million. And that resulted in an expense reduction of $641,000. And the reason it wasn't a one-for-one reduction is the town voted to use $600,000 of stabilization funds. And that was to help mitigate avoiding deeper cuts to both the town and the school department budget. And so this slide is really just to show you specifically how the expense reductions were taken to mirror the revenue reductions. Next slide, please. So Mass DOR is advising us that they have committed to providing the revenues that are displayed in this chart. So they're committed to providing $5,821,000 of local aid between Chapter 70 and local aid, which is $517,000 more than what we had in our budget that was approved by town meeting. So town meeting had placeholders of 4.1 million for Chapter 70, and the state is committed to funding Chapter 70 at 4.4 million. So there's $344,000 of additional Chapter 70 money, and there's $173,000 of additional local aid compared to what we carried in the budget that was approved by town meeting for revenue. And it's important to note that this is only one source of revenue. There are other revenue sources in that budget. New growth is a revenue line in that budget. So that $517,000 of additional revenue could be eroded by shortfalls in other revenue lines, but at a minimum, we are right now ahead of the game by $517,000. Next slide, thanks. So the school committee approved an FY21 budget at the February 12th meeting. The total school budget that was approved was for $30,690,000. And that was a combination of general fund and tuition revolving fund. And the budget as submitted requested $28 million from the general fund and used $1.7 million from the tuition revolving fund. So the Nahant tuition revolving fund used $1.5 million for our general education and $200,000 for special education. And so the revenue guidance was reduced. And as a result, our budget was reduced by $381,000. And so the town meeting approved a general fund budget of $28,602,000 or $381,000 less. And I felt like it was important to recap that for everybody, just so you understand, because I know there was some confusion with the numbers that were in that was in the town meeting warrant. But this is the math. So next slide, thanks. So trying to walk through what school committee approved in February to what town meeting approved and where some of those, where that $381,000 was actually reduced from. So as you know, you approve your budget by cost center. And so the administrative cost center was reduced by $15,000. General education was reduced by $146,000. Special education by $32,000. Facilities by $114,000 and district-wide programs by $72,000. There were no changes to the revenue source, or if you will, from Nahant for both general education and special education. Some of the known, some of the drivers in that turnover were some staff turnover. Obviously, we had staff turnover between when the budget was developed back in. The snapshot of staff was taken in late November, early December. And so obviously staffing has changed since then. So some turnover savings, some reduction in positions, expense reductions, and prepayment of special education tuition. So you can go to the next slide, please. The $381,000, if you look at by category, $100,000 of it was compensation and $280,000 of it was non-compensation. The majority of cost savings resulted from changing things from non-compensation related lines in the budget. So an example of that is on one of our grants, we had charged a teacher to the grant, and we took the teacher off the grant and put it onto the operating budget and moved transportation expense from the operating budget to the grant. So there was a lot of things that moved. And so that's why this looks this way. Next slide. Thanks. So if we look at the administrative cost center, we eliminated the COLAs for all non-union staff. We reclassed the substitute coordinator stipend from a clerical salary. So that's where you see kind of the difference between professional staffs going down by $28,000, but clerical staff is going up by 13. We reclassed that because I previously,
sorry.
no, that's okay. Wrong way.
Wait, I was on 8.
There we go. Yeah. We had previously captured, when I did the budget presentation, I had captured that that stipend in the professional line, and I meant to capture it in the clerical line. So there's the detail on the $15,000 reduction to administrative cost center. Next slide, please. And again, I presented all these slides to you in great detail, the same way I presented the original budget. I can go through them in depth if you like, or we can kind of go through them a little more quickly. But this one, the major changes from 18 to 19, really a lot of the fund codes for DESE, there's a major overhaul from FY18 to FY19 that we didn't implement in our chart of accounts. And so a lot of this work was cleanup work that, so things are moving between lines that we previously didn't capture it correctly. So a great example is 1410, the business office. We've previously been capturing people in my line that don't belong there, they belong in other lines. So that's where you see a difference. I didn't actually lose staff from $374,000 to $317,000. I just put people where they belong to now. So that's where you're seeing some of the fluctuation. This one is the general education cost center line. You can see there was changes in professional salaries, other salaries. Again, turnover savings. We changed the accounting for the position previously charged to a grant. We eliminated COLA increases for non-union staff. We moved a high school teaching position from a grant to the operating budget. Other salaries as a result of turnover. Contracted services changed. Again, $100,000 from transportation was moved off of the operating budget onto a grant. And we are utilizing Endicott fellows for $38,000. So that's the swing in the contracted services line. Supplies and materials, that was a reclass of expense. I had captured it in the wrong line previously. And then the other one is we really, in the budget presentation that was done in February, I had captured all of the expenditures for software licenses in one line. And again, DESE reorganized the chart of accounts more than a year ago. And we really thoughtfully went through and said, okay, really, this is a curriculum related software and it belongs in general education versus this is a district-wide system software and it belongs in a different cost center line. Next slide, please. Again, a more granular level detail for the general education. So I think you can probably skip forward from this one. Next slide.
Sorry, just looking at it.
Oh, okay.
No, it's okay.
Sure. So special education, there's an additional co-taught classroom at the high school. That's why you see the professional salaries lines going up by $115,000. So there's other some correcting the mapping of a BCBA. So previously a position had been mapped to the wrong line. It belonged in special education. So when we had the chance to go back and really go through the budget, we uncovered some inconsistency in our mapping. Other salaries, the change is a result of turnover for 3 positions specifically. Contracted services, we were able to prepay $81,000 of FY tuition money, of FY tuitions with FY20 money, which is allowed under Mass General Law. And we were able to reduce our circuit breaker offset by $29,000. So we initially, in the budget that we presented in February, we were relying heavily on dipping more into circuit breaker than we had wanted to. We were able to soften that in this iteration of the budget. Next slide. So here's just some more, more granular level detail by DESI code of the changes between what was presented in February and what is now in Munis for FY21 budget. And a lot of this was really just cleanup, correcting where the team chair stipends were captured, capturing turnover savings, and the ability to prepay some tuition and lessen the reliance on circuit breaker. So next slide, please. Facilities. So we reviewed and adjusted all of our heating and electricity to be level with prior year spending. And so this is one of those ones where I do anticipate our heating and electric bills to be increased over what we have budgeted at this point, because we are maximizing moving the air around. And so we have our systems working 24/7, and we will have them working 24/7 to keep air and ventilation systems fully operational. So I do expect that we probably are going to overspend these lines. By how much at this point is really, it's too early to know. We did adjust the revolving fund. We reduced it. We reduced support on one of the revolving funds by $10,000. We are going to have some savings on our lease for our copier machines. We did enter in new agreements for 28 machines. And Rico had a special where we're getting the first 3 months free, 3 months, waiving 3 months of payments. So we are going to capture some savings there. Some savings on our phone system. And we moved the security software to the district-wide cost center. It didn't really belong in facilities. Next slide, please. And again, this is just a line by line to kind of show the detail of where the changes were from February's budget approval to the current one. And thanks. So here's just. No, that's fine. Right. So here's district-wide. So there is a change here, specifically like other salaries. If you look at that, it looks like it's going up by $11,000. That's really, and the professional salaries looks like it's going down by $13,000. It's really just a shifting from one line to another. The summer help, when I had in my haste to get things done for the budget in February, I mapped it to professional salary line. It really belonged in the other salary line. School committee approved an overall budget for software licenses of $151,000. And so when you see that other expense line going down by $75,000, that really is now in the general ed budget, because it was licenses for things that are used in classrooms and not really, like an example of what's in here is like our Aspen license, for district-wide software versus things that are used in the classroom. And I'm trying to think of an example off the top of my head and I can't, so I apologize. Next slide, please. And again, the budget, the granular level detail by DESI cost center.
Can you go back one, just on the medical services?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. And then this is, again, so this is a wrap up. So this is the total school budget. Just as a recap, and really this is for Mr. Giannitis, our newest school committee member. We vote the budget by cost center. And so we have 5 cost centers: the administration, general education, special ed, school facilities, and district-wide programs that include health services, athletics, extracurricular, and district-wide technology. And so by adopting the cost center method, we have the ability, the superintendent and I have the ability to move funds within a cost center. So for general education, if we remove classrooms from Stanley to Clark, or from, that's the only, from school to school, we have the ability to transfer money between schools, but not between cost centers. So if we are short in a cost center, we would have to come to the school committee to ask for a transfer from general education to special education, or from district-wide to school facilities. So it's important to have the school committee vote the new budget by cost center, because that's what was approved at town meeting, and that's what's in Munis currently. We don't have any requests at this time to move money between cost centers, but we need to reset the baseline if we do need to move money around and come to the school committee and ask for permission to do that. So with that, I will take any questions.
Martha, can I ask you, the Manhattan tuition, are we in the last year of that contract?
I believe so. I would have to go back and double check that.
June 2022.
Ted, we are due to begin negotiations this September with them, but we intentionally built an extra long lead time in it because we wanted to give both sides the option to make alternative plans. We didn't want either side to feel like they had to say yes to a contract because of time. So
I was just wondering, just thinking ahead in my mind.
yeah, we got to get back around the negotiation table on that one.
Martha?
Yes.
Can you just explain that spending down the out of district tuition and how we softened the circuit breaker? Like,
sure. So
how's that money? Like, that money was from savings?
It was. So so some of the end of year accumulation of dark time from positions, or spending that didn't happen, we had savings as a result of transportation expense coming in much lower.
Okay, I just was trying to.
Yeah, there were a lot of there were a lot of factors that led to us having money at the end. We thought that we were going to use those savings to procure Chromebooks to help with the one-to-one, and then the CARES Act came through, and the town allowed us to use a portion of that. So it really were a lot of moving pieces in June, and it wasn't until mid-June that we really could come up and say, okay, well, how much money do we still have left, and what's the best thing to do? And the superintendent and the assistant superintendent and I really collectively had a thoughtful conversation about it and said, what's the right thing to do? And we felt the right thing to do with any savings would be to put it towards special education tuition, because that allows us to prepay and help next year. So so that was how that came to be.
All right, thanks.
Martha, I have a question. I have a quick question for you. So I heard you mention grants, and this is more of a general question. So is the school district pursuing any, like, even COVID grants on an ongoing basis, just to, if there's anything out there, potentially we could get, we get it?
Sure. I feel like this is a great setup, because at the last meeting it was embargoed and I couldn't share with you. So we applied for $117,000 of the remote learning technology grant, COVID grant. And I really felt like the district we'd be lucky if we got maybe 10 or 20,000, because a lot of it was based on, the community wealth and the Chapter 70 formula and so many other things and it was a limited pool of money. So I wasn't overzealous in what I thought we would get. We got $57,000, which was huge. It's a matching grant, so we have to find $57,000 to match it. We're going to use another COVID grant to match it. You can use other grants to match it. You don't have to use operating funds. But there are 4 or 5 COVID grants right now that we have applied for and received. And they're all really entitlement. So it's a fixed number that we can get for most of them. And so we are actively pursuing that. The grant that I was referring to earlier, it's the METCO grant, where it's not uncommon to carry some teacher salaries on it. And at this point, it made more sense to put the teacher salary back onto the operating budget and put the transportation 100% on the grant.
Thank you.
Can I ask one more question?
Of course.
Actually, it'd probably go to Amy. Amy, can we at least think about maybe a committee of the whole for the budget? And I hate to, I know Pam and the leadership team and everyone is busy, but I want to have it at least on the radar or request that it be on the radar because, I mean, we've got a lot of, whether it be COVID, whether it be, you know, alterations or just a regular budget. Do you think we could get that on the agenda soon?
I would say I would turn this over to whomever is off the top of my head. I don't know whoever the chair of the budget subcommittee is. You know, I
think that's John and I. So I just out of respect to you.
Well, I appreciate that, but if as the subcommittee chair, it is your prerogative. So I would get with I would task you and Martha to connect and set the agenda for that and have Maureen book it.
Okay, thank you. John, I'll be in touch with you.
I would say that it's a bit early to try and do a full-blown forecast on what FY21 looks like, as we don't fully know when students are going to return for hybrid. And so some of those big variables that will swing our costs, like transportation, are really unknown at this point for some things. But I'm happy to provide whatever information you'd like to.
Thank you.
Has anyone heard any talk about any fall town meetings? Has there been any?
No, there wasn't any discussion about it at our tri-chair either.
Okay.
I mean, I heard there's definitely going to be one. I just don't know if it's going to be in September or October, right?
I've heard either October or early November.
Yeah.
There's no state budget yet, so it's a little premature to have the fall town meeting without a state budget fully set. I anecdotally, I had heard the same thing that Mrs. Wright heard, that October.
Definitely going to happen.
Yes.
Yeah, I just never had heard anything since the spring.
So if there aren't other questions, this does require a vote.
So Martha, in terms of the specific votes that we need, do we need to go by specific line? And I apologize, I'm thinking that I should probably know this.
That's okay. And I think that's why I intentionally made this the last slide again, so you could go from this slide. So it is by line. So it's administrative cost center for 1,349,000. Sorry, I would really have to get close to the screen to see the detail. 862. General education would be the 14,253,471. So the new revised town meeting approved budget is the column that you need to vote to the 28,602,254.
And just to be clear, so we just need to vote on the bottom line, or do we need to vote on each specific line item?
Each cost center.
Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve the fiscal year 2021 administration cost center from 1,364,939 to a revised number of 1,349,862.
I'll
Make the
move.
motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any questions? So we'll do a roll call. All in favor, Karen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
and Amy makes that unanimous. I will entertain a motion to revise the general education line item from 14,399,893 to a revised number of 14,253,471.
I'll make
Do I
the
have a motion? Can I have a second?
I'll second it.
Roll call vote. Karen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
and Amy makes that unanimous. I will entertain a motion to amend the special education line item from 9,239,463 to a revised number of $9,206,901.
Make the motion.
Second.
Any questions? All in favor, roll call. Karen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ted,
Yes.
and Amy makes unanimous. I will entertain a motion to amend the school facilities budget from $2,295,202 to $2,181,127.
I'll make the motion.
Ed, really? You had to mess up the system? I'll second.
Roll call. Karen,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Ted.
Yes.
So lastly, I will entertain a motion to, no, it's not lastly. I will entertain a motion to amend the district-wide program budget from $1,683,756 to $1,610,893. Do I have a motion? Karen,
Yes. I make the motion.
do I have a second?
Yes.
Any
I'm not sure what the
discussion?
rule is, but
Any discussions?
Can you switch the order up?
Roll call, vote for John,
Yes.
Suzanne,
yes.
Ted,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
and Amy makes that unanimous. So just to make this ponderous, I will entertain a motion to change the grand total of our budget from our original approved budget for FY 2021 of $28,983,254 to the town meeting approved budget for fiscal year 2021 to $28,602,254, which accounts for a difference of $381,000. Could I have a motion?
Make the motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Ted,
Yes.
Karen,
Yes.
John,
Yes.
Suzanne,
Yes.
and I will make it unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
No, Martha, we really appreciate the work that you're doing here. It's the logistics of this in these times are testing everybody, but you're right on top of it. So thank you for your acumen.
Thank you.
I'm gonna stop sharing my screen now, Amy,
Okay.
I think, unless I'm on.
All right. Before I want to move into, I'll give the the tri-chair update after, but let's move into the subcommittee. I particularly want to get to the policy. So if you wouldn't mind,
Oh, sharing again, right? Sure.
yeah, let's move right into policy because this needs a lot of, this needs good discussion.
Okay. So,
that is impossible to read.
It's impossible to read. Hold on. How do I make it bigger? I don't know how to make it bigger. You really can't read that?
No, I can't access it either. When I click on it, it's I need a password.
All right, hold on a second.
You click 200%. Yeah, there we go.
Wait, you can read that now?
Yeah.
Better.
You literally can read that one better?
Yes, but if everybody goes to the view options next to you are viewing Suzanne's right screen, I think you can increase it yourself. You can. So if you go up where it says at the top of your screen, you are viewing Suzanne right screen, and you move over to view options and you drop down.
Okay,
that
make
view.
it 200.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I can't make it any bigger.
No, you did.
Yeah, you can make it as big as you want.
I can make it, I just did that and you guys didn't like it.
Okay, take it away.
Is that bad? Can you make it bigger on your screen?
I can, but then it's just not on my screen at all. Oh, it's okay. Go.
All right, I quit. So this is the one we read last week. And this is the general policy that sort of just covers that we're in a pandemic and we might need to adjust some policies that we have. And for the most part, they're staying the same except for the few we've addended. So John and I just went through it and read it a little bit more carefully. It's just the things that are in red are some language we sort of just tightened up a little bit, but nothing substantive after we went through it last week, except for the very last line on the first page. We thought that if we give the superintendent permission to act expeditiously to execute some back to school planning and there's a change in any sort of policy or a suspension or a change in rules or policies that we'd like her to report to the school committee promptly what those changes have been in case we need to act on anything. So that just wasn't, we just hadn't said that. So that was the one change, this line here at the bottom. Nothing else on this policy. And like I said, this was just sort of to cover that we're in a pandemic and we need to sort of be flexible about our policies. Here's the face covering and other personal protective equipment. You'll recall that we had a discussion about when or about exempting anyone or for any reasons. And we decided after some discussion not to, that would happen on a case-by-case basis if people had issues. But we are saying that if you're in the building and you're in a common area, even when you can physically distance, if you're in a common area, you need to have a face mask on. This gives some allowances for people who are in their offices that are not common areas, or if you're in your classroom with no students or no other co-teacher or anything, you can take your mask down, but as soon as another person's in or you leave your room and enter the common space, the mask goes back up. We also, I should have had this in red right here, the sentence right here that I'm highlighting. We said no bandanas or masks with exhalation vents valves or vents. That's something that's coming out of, that's something from this directly from the CDC. And we deleted the paragraph about exemptions here. And then we also, this used to say outdoors, but we've said face mask breaks will occur outdoors. So we didn't need to be redundant there. And then we just added that if visitors, they'll be denied entry, or if they're in the building, they'll be asked to leave if they don't adhere to this policy. So that was it for face masks. Nothing changed, nothing changed. Okay, this policy, we talked a lot about physical distancing we were calling it social distancing, and hand washing and sanitizing. And I was looking at some other policies from some other districts and saw that a lot of people are sort of grouping these health related and safety practices together. So decided to just put these together in one policy and add these two here to it, because that seemed to be standard to have sort of like this grouping. A lot of people had the face mask in here too, so I just added it and just said to look at our face mask, to refer back to our face mask policy. And per our discussion on Tuesday, we had a policy subcommittee meeting, and we talked about the same stuff we had talked about last week and when we read this, but then we also wanted to add that individuals will be expected not to share personal items and to manage their belongings in ways that keep them separate from others to avoid inadvertent contact, thinking that, you know, students might have boxes of manipulatives that they're bringing to school, or, you know, even just not encouraging them to share any of their stuff for any sort of cross-contamination issues. And then for hand washing, after reading some policies and some recommendations, some policies explain that we wanted to explain that we will be providing the hand sanitizer, and that we also be providing hand sanitizer stations, but those were going to be in areas where school staff were present, such as common areas or hallways or classrooms, so that we could make sure they were being monitored. John, jump in if you want to say something, if I'm forgetting something. And in this next paragraph, I forgot here, this during transitions, we talked about that students and staff should at a minimum wash hands upon arrival and we added during transitions, before and after meals, after bathroom use, after coughing or sneezing, and before dismissals. And then also hand sanitizing or hand washing should occur after sharing or any high touched areas. This seems to be pretty standard language, and a lot of these policies will be backed up with protocols that are going to happen, you know, during the school day about physical distancing and how kids are going to maneuver through buildings and what hand washing times and breaks look like. The next area is some new text added to this policy, because we are planning to screen staff and students. I mean screening staff and students. Like, this is like about the self-check. The districts will ensure that all families and staff are familiar with the state-provided checklist of symptoms. All asymptomatic staff will be screened before returning to in-person work. Staff will self-screen each day before reporting to work, and families will screen students each day prior to sending them to school. I don't know, now that I heard Mrs. Farley's thing, I don't think we need to add self-screening before they participate in athletic practices, because I think that just goes with screening before you, I don't know, we're asking students to self-screen too, so maybe we should add students will be self-screening before extracurricular activities, because I guess maybe they'll be doing that before they do any sort of extracurriculars, if you guys want me to add that.
Would it just say school or school activities?
School-related activities.
I mean, we're asking high school students.
So families and or students will screen.
Well, this is each day prior to sending them to school, but how about students she's asking them to screen before they show up at practices.
Additionally,
she's asking
students will be required to screen.
Extracurriculars, because I think if in the event that they're going to have other extracurricular activities at the high school.
Well, so I guess it depends, and I guess it also is going to depend on what falls out in terms of what happens at the middle school. Can middle schoolers self-screen? Like, I think that's very specific to the high school.
So students. I don't, okay, so, so help me out.
So let me ask, does it need to be a part of the policy since it's part of the protocols? Knowing that the protocols are always more specific than the policy?
Yeah, we were talking about the difference. We've always talked about the difference between
Right.
protocol, procedure, and policy. So
So we don't have to mandate it as part of the policy because we're providing the umbrella of school. And then the athletic director is adding the additional layer of
correct.
sort of
I
extra.
think it would be protocol. I think it would be protocol or procedure.
It's gone.
Okay.
I'm down with either one because because also we've said that we're going to be flexible with these policies as much as we can, and we might have to jump in and change them when things happen. So I think this is a strong enough start, you know, to make sure that we have these policies so that protocols are being developed to address these things. So that's fine. And if we need to make it more specific, obviously we can. And then, you know, we started to have this conversation that we're creating these isolation spaces. And so we just wanted to make sure that that happens, that we have identified special isolation spaces in every school that are separate from the nurse's office for students displaying the symptoms until they can be picked up by a family member.
I would just say that to strengthen, you know, that it's only for that. As an isolated space.
Like only for students?
No, only for COVID. So it's not like if a kid's just, you know, I don't know, I guess barfing could be a COVID-19 symptom, but like if for some reason that they're in there for any other reason, that it's not just some extra space that we can take a hold of. If it's empty, oh, just go wait in there for now, that it's only for that. In order to minimize transmission of the virus, we have
I have to just figure out how to write that. Where to say that?
We have.
How about designated space?
A designated isolated space.
All right. Do you want me to keep an only for this purpose?
Yeah. Yeah, why not?
Whatever. It's fine, right? It's just extra redundancy, right? It's all good. Okay, so
more than one person, can more than one person be in that room at a time? If there are two
no,
kids?
it's not supposed to be. So
what if you have two? What if you have?
Didn't we say that, Pam?
Say it again.
What if you have two kids?
What if you have two kids?
Can two kids be in that isolation room?
Yes. Yes. The idea being 6 feet apart with a mask. Yes, that's the guidance.
Okay.
Okay, so these two, since we did the first read, we can vote on this. So we can just go ahead and vote on these. If I'm gonna make the reds black and then
I do have one question, Suzanne. I noticed that you did say no bandanas.
Well, this is what we started to say, a fitted face covering, right? So it's tight under the chin and tight like from the nose and mouth, right? So it's fitted. So we wanted to say no bandanas, like just as a, for example, no bandanas. We weren't saying no to gaiters because, you know, the CDC hasn't, you know, since that brouhaha, there's been a pushback on that a little bit, and the CDC isn't saying that. They're still saying loose fitting or the valves or vents. So we were going to just go with that, with the assumption that if things change and we have to.
Okay.
So that's what that's about. So if someone wants to make a motion to vote for.
So if you can put it up there just so I can read it, I'll entertain a motion to approve policy EBCS.
And then Amy, this one,
EBCFA.
Right, and then
E.
Oh, this isn't. No, we're not doing that yet. Yeah, just.
So
Just
it's
these two for now.
EBCFA and EBCS. Okay, so I will entertain a motion to approve two policies, EBCS and EBCFA. John, why don't you make the motion since you're on the committee?
Okay, I'll make the motion.
Can I have a second?
I'll second.
Any discussions? Okay, a roll call vote. All in favor? John?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
I'm a yes. Suzanne?
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, now. Okay, so these three, I'm not really sure how to do these. These are the ones that we've kind of made some addenda to include. It sort of goes with that first one, and maybe we should have done it with this, but these are the three that stuck out so far. There might be some other ones, and people are looking at some other policies we have. I know Pam's looking at a couple.
Do we really have to modify a policy for the school calendar?
No, we actually don't, because we only vote to accept or not, but I just put it in there that we did change it, just.
Because that will be a part of the MOA with the teachers.
Yeah, it's just, this is one that MASC said, if you change the calendar, but we have such a general policy that just says we just vote it up or down, right? We don't talk about how many, whatever. It's just, I think it's redundant, Amy. It's probably isn't necessary, but it was just
there.
Trying to keep track of, right.
Well, it's because we did change it.
I won't begrudge you your policy change.
Whatever. I don't really.
Yes, you do.
I'm so over this right now because it's like such a headache, because this is really tough stuff just to think about all this, whatever. Anyway, the other policy was privacy. I think we sort of talked about this at the end of last year when we were doing Zooms, but there's no recording a Zoom presentation without permission. So we don't have that in our current policy, but we need that.
And
then
who would be giving the permission?
I imagine the person giving the presentation. If the teacher was okay being recorded, or.
Because the students can't be recorded.
No, and they shouldn't be recording unless the teacher says, I want you to record this so you can practice it later. And we shouldn't have parents recording lessons or anyone. Like it's, because there's other kids on them, like the video or whatever. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
It's about privacy and student privacy.
But
even when my administrators were leading a staff meeting, they couldn't record the Zoom without letting their staff know. So it's for staff and students.
But also, we can't necessarily say that recording Zoom presentations is not allowed, because they are going to record, teachers are going to record themselves.
Themselves, but not students.
It says without permission.
Without permission. They're giving,
okay.
Right? They can record their own. I don't know.
Okay.
And the last one's about visitors. We've decided that non-essential visitors won't be allowed in the building without prior approval. So thinking ahead that if there's a repairman or someone else that has to come in the building, but we're just going to discourage people from coming into the building. And if they do come in, they have to, abide by our face covering and maintaining 6 feet of physical distance and our rules in the building. This is stuff we read last week that just has to go in, I guess, with that first policy, the interim one. So I guess we need to just vote these agendas to IC, JRA, and KI. Oh, yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt you. So on the privacy one, I don't know if this is language that was approved, previously, but, I see the word permission, and I'm wondering if notification might be more appropriate here.
Well, notification is different. I'm telling you, I'm going to record this. You didn't ask for permission, right? I'm just saying, you're notifying someone It's like, I'm notifying you it's being recorded. Like that's what we say at the beginning of our meetings. Like, I just want everyone who's participating in this meeting to understand the meeting's being recorded, right? Like how we notify the public when they do comments, like this is being recorded, but that's different than saying, am I allowed to record this, right?
Yeah, they're very different. So again, I don't know. I'm not saying one is better than another. It's just permission sounds a lot more cumbersome to get versus just a notification. So,
Well, it should be, because there's kids' pictures on here, right? And we don't want other kids or parents or anyone filming this or recording it with people's pictures or anything, right? The content even is
no, agreed.
proprietary to the person delivering it, right? I'm just, right? Isn't that what the privacy is about?
I'm not disagreeing with you. All I'm throwing out is if notification would be a reasonable substitute for permission here. And again, I just was throwing out the question if if folks want to go a different direction, that's fine.
Should it be both without notification and permission?
I don't think that would work, but
Well, they're two different things. Notification doesn't ensure any sort of privacy.
But it's also permission. It's not notification or, it's notification and.
Does maybe Joe have any advice on what other?
So let's just take this out for now, because I got some other questions for Darren.
Okay.
And let me just put that on my list of things for Darren.
Okay.
There we go.
Suzanne, this is Martha. Also, that would be, you're talking about teacher Zoom classes being recorded, right, into people's homes.
Yeah, I think that.
Yeah. So then you're actually then, people would have identifying information of students, including names, including.
No, I know, that's what I'm saying. Like, that's
so
why.
yeah, it can't happen. Right.
No, we know that.
Yeah.
Right. That's why I'm saying you can't record it unless you have permission. And the teacher's going to say, no, you can't record it because there's students' names on here.
Right.
Or
I
the
agree
teacher
with that.
might say, yes, you can record it because it's just my screen. There's no people. So you can record my lesson because as I show you how to do this. But when there's kids on the screens or when, I don't know. I don't know how. Yes, I'll ask Darren how that should be written.
Okay, thank you.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
All right, so we just need to vote to put these two in the addended columns. School calendar, motion to addend school calendar IC and school visitors KI policy.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion to addend policies IC and KI. Do I have a second?
I'll second it.
All in favor, Karen?
Yes.
John?
yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
And I will make
Okay,
it
then.
unanimous.
Oh, sorry. All right, and then we have two that need a first read here.
Okay.
So, John, after our last meeting, the CDC actually came out with some different guidelines. So, I made some phone calls to find out how to reword what our policy was to accommodate those new guidelines. So the first one is about COVID-19 screening, the screening that Pam talked about with Cataldo, doing the screening 72 hours before employees or staff does in-person is on site or does some in-person work or returns to in-person work. So the screening, instead of the screening happening on August 31st, if staff isn't returning, obviously it's kind of a waste to do it then because you could be infected the next, 10 or 15 days until you return to work, right? So screening needs to happen within 72 hours of being on site. Employees, also, this is something else that could happen. Employees may also get tested in their local community at a Stop the Spread site and provide evidence of testing. And then Also, we had that individuals should not get screened if they've been out of state for 14 days or been in contact with a positive individual or had symptoms or a fever. But the CDC has since said that individuals don't necessarily need to quarantine, or get tested if they've come in contact. I'm not really sure exactly what that's about, but we have decided to say probably employees who have traveled to the high-risk county or to the high-risk counties in the past 14 days should follow mass DPH travel advisories, which say quarantine and get tested. So that's sort of
Counties or countries? What are you trying to say there?
counties. Didn't I say counties? High-risk counties, or travel to we can say high-risk areas. Just traveled outside of state is actually sort of bigger, outside of state or county. I mean,
Outside of county means what? You went to Boston and you have
well, if you're like
Outside the state.
Amy, you're muted.
Well, we're saying outside of state because that's what Massachusetts is saying. I think this is one of those policies that's just going to get looked at by our occupational health person to make sure it says the right things. But this is in accordance with what the new CDC said. And all this stuff is the same we had here, just written out. It's the same text. Basically, it's just this one we're saying to follow mass DPH travel advisory because that seems to be the thing that's changing. Sort of. I don't know. You guys have some feedback on this one?
How about, would Julie be able to, wouldn't you want it to be the same in regards to what HR is saying or doing?
What do you mean? What's HR doing, Pam?
They have a whole safety plan for the town, but we have that same safety plan. I think that's slightly different in that, this is policy and this school committee voted to follow DPH and CDC guidance. So, there's lots of different pieces. We're not and remember that I'm just going to say that this committee voted to follow DESE, DPH, and CDC guidance. And if this is what the CDC is saying, then I think it should be in our policy. But I think it's more of a legal question as well, too.
Because it's stricter than what the town's saying, Ted?
I'm just looking at just a set of eyes that have dealt with, any of the employee parameters of what goes on. But if that's what DPH is, and I think that's consistent.
So,
well, this is our first read.
Yeah, so my question
and you guys
is,
don't digest this.
Yeah, no, but my question is, if this policy is about screening, then it should just stick to screening and it shouldn't be talking about testing in terms of exposure or.
Well, these are, so there's no sense, it's telling you who's not going to get screened, right? Because we're not going to screen people who potentially have this, right? Because this isn't a diagnostic test. We're literally trying to have a baseline of our staff, right? To know that the people that are in the building do not have COVID when they're in the building or with our kids.
Right, but you say that in the very first line. I feel like that first line says that. It's screening, not diagnostic for asymptomatic staff. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I guess this is just sort of, so beyond asymptomatic, if you've had contact with confirmed COVID person, you shouldn't get screened. If you've had it before, you shouldn't get screened. Like,
Amy, you're muted.
Is it that you shouldn't get screened, or that it's more than that? It's that you shouldn't get screened because of the presumption you're already behaving with the presumption that you're positive.
right, because you're already quarantining and you're already, I don't know. That's a good question.
So I would change the title of it to
It's not interesting because that would be much more,
like, I'll be honest with you, as I was reading it, I sort of lost track that this was just for our screening policy, and was thinking, well, why wouldn't we test people who haven't been lab, like, I didn't
I know what you're
understand.
saying.
So I feel like it, I don't know if I'm just being dense, but but I think if it were a baseline COVID screening.
yeah, I think this should stick to just that baselining. And then if we're planning to potentially do random screening or other ongoing screenings, just something generic about that, because we don't actually know what that will look like. But we could say something like the district may engage in other random screenings, but
Well, yeah, I don't know. I don't want to say that. So, oh my God, what did I just do?
Suzanne, in that first sentence,
yeah,
the SPS district will be conducting COVID screening tests. If we can underline not for diagnostic purposes.
Okay.
I just think it sets it up more clearly what we're talking about.
yeah, I'm just not sure you have to list the people that shouldn't, because anybody who's planning to come back to work would be being tested because they're not symptomatic and they don't know that they've been exposed or anything like that. You know what I mean?
Okay, so let's just think about maybe just not having that, and then
Yeah.
I'm gonna vet that a little bit, but
That might need to go in something else, but not this. Do you know what I'm
right. Okay, and then the data, it's going to be kept with the district occupational health professional. In the event the position has yet to be filled, the district lead nurse will be responsible for the confidentiality and use of the data.
Okay.
All right, so yeah.
Because I'm just asking because the lead nurse is part of the union. Do they have the confidentiality?
Everybody signs a confidentiality agreement, yeah.
Okay. I just didn't know if it belonged at that point with HR instead of. That's fine. If that's the way it works, that's the way it works.
Response to positive COVID. So we accept the risk of exposure to COVID-19 in schools may not be zero. The Swampscott public schools will follow DESE guidelines developed in collaboration with the Massachusetts DPH and evolving medical and scientific findings on protocols for responding to the individuals who have contracted or been exposed to COVID-19. Such protocols will be consistent with the laws and regulations and be consistent with the standards to protect the privacy of students, staff, their families, and other persons. As this response guidance is updated, district protocols will be as well. So I know Pam's already been talking about this with the task force for the protocols about what happens in different COVID scenarios. And the DESE has their full guidance here at this link to responding to the COVID-19 in our schools. And then
that seems appropriately broad.
Yeah.
So that the procedure is covering it.
Yeah, we just want to say that we are going to have protocols in place to respond to different scenarios at the building level.
Okay.
So yeah. So anyway, I think these are important ones to get buttoned up before school starts. So it's really important that we have this read today, and that at our next meeting we can vote a policy in. So I'll check about this one, the first one.
Okay.
And then if you guys have thoughts, let's just either email me and John or tell us what else you think we should be looking at or what you think is missing here or whatever. then we'll try to vote it in at the next meeting.
Okay.
And then,
I'm assuming MASC is sharing. I know that they're sharing new policies all the time.
yeah, and so are on the listserv, lots of districts doing lots of things. So it's just hard. Yeah, and there's still some more we need to look at. I know the task forces are looking at cleaning and what's happening. And now that things are in the air about what spaces are being used, are we still doing AM, PM or whatever? We just have to figure out that stuff and when the cleaning is going to happen and what it looks like. So we just need to make sure that we're saying we're going to work on a cleaning protocol the cleaning policy once the
protocol is.
Once we sort of have a better idea of what the school's going to look like and the protocols, right?
Yeah.
So, yeah. Those are the ones to come, but these two for now. So this will just go on for next time. Good, people?
Yeah.
People, you guys are running out of steam. Let's go to the end, power through.
Thank you. Okay. Policy and harassment.
Oh, forgot about that one. Hold on, I have to pull that up somehow. Sorry, where's that? I need to go on my drive. I don't know where that policy is, people.
Was there a deadline on that one that it had to be?
Yeah, can someone get that? Can someone else share their screen and put that policy up? It's in the documents for today.
See if I can do that.
I'm sorry, I just closed that whole screen up. Anyway, so this policy, I know we started talking about it a long time ago. This was in regards to some new laws that were passed that we have to, so it was triggered by having to change, oh my God, John, help me.
Title IX.
Yeah, it was Title IX, but it was to change.
Had to do with evidence, right?
Yeah, so there's a statement like you can pursue investigating if there's a preponderance of evidence or beyond reasonable doubt. So it's all about complying with due process. So what we currently have is a policy called Policy Against Harassment. We don't even actually have this policy, ACAB. I'm trying to find out if this is a completely new policy from MASC, and did they use the same one we had before, the ACH? But so I have an email into the attorney to ask if this policy can be in place of, substitute or whatever, in place of our ACH, because our policy seems a little tiny bit outdated, and there's some differences between the two policies. But generally what we're looking at in this policy is that it talks about, all harassment to all protected classes. And then it goes on to describe, if you keep going down, Amy, it goes on to describe in depth what sexual harassment is. We don't have anything like this. We just kind of describe them all in the same way. So this is a little more detail about things that count as sexual harassment. And the only thing, if you keep going down to where I have read, there's like, or the comment. So it keeps going on, sexual, and then it talks about this one right here, due process protections. This bullet number 3, the MASC is recommending you say clear and convincing evidence or preponderance of the evidence, which means in legal speakies, I guess that means a greater than 50% chance the claim is true. So you can either say that's when you're going to, that's when you have due process protections, or we can say beyond a reasonable doubt, which seems ridiculous. So I don't completely understand why we wouldn't say preponderance of evidence. And then we just have to make sure at the bottom that other stuff that's highlighted is that this policy actually needs to be summarized and be sent to families and employees all need to be trained on this new law. And we need to identify our Title IX coordinator in here, and we have to also identify an additional person who will receive the complaint, which I guess is probably the HR person.
Yeah, I would think that would be Julie.
Yeah. So these are like, this is what we need to do.
Suzanne, did I hear you say that we don't have this in place?
So we do. We actually do have a sexual harassment. I mean, we do have an harassment policy, and we have every single protected class, like, you know, do not harass. And this is, and we sort of have like, this is what constitutes harassment, but it's nothing as specific as this. And on the same token, there's a few things in here that we have in our policy that aren't in here anymore. I mean, this is my homework for you guys, to look at ACH and look at this policy together and see if you think, I mean, when I read it, I see that this is better for a lot of reasons. But I also have a question into legal about if they're equivalent policies, or if we should keep them both or get rid of one. But to Karen, to your point, it's something that should be voted in ASAP, because that's what the law says.
Okay.
Do we have a Title IX coordinator?
Yeah, Martha is. So, I mean, Raymond.
Martha Raymond, okay.
Yeah. Yeah, so she knows this has to be done.
And is that harassment policy part of the employee handbook?
That's part of our policies, so.
It wouldn't be in the employee handbook. If there's a section on harassment, it would be referring to school committee policy.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Suzanne, you said our homework is to, can you forward?
So ACH is our current policy. We do not, this policy is completely, the one you're seeing in front of you is completely new to us.
Okay.
That came from the MASC, and that language was developed. I thought it was just newly developed because of this law. So I'm just.
Can I ask you, if it's not too much of a pain, could you put both policies on a page and send them out to the school committee so we can do our homework?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
But I just want to reiterate, you can always find the policies at masc.org under online policies. But just want you to know. I'm happy to do it, Amy.
I just wrote it down.
I like to teach the horse to drink.
I appreciate it.
Okay, so anyway, I think this requires you guys to actually do like a more thorough first read. It's kind of important stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, that's.
And do you want to do this for the next meeting?
Yeah, I think we have to keep powering through these.
Okay.
And with that, I'm done.
Do you want to give us a school building update?
Yep, because I'm having so much fun. It's great. We had a really, really excellent forum last night. I thought our design team did a really great job of going through all the options that are still on the table, and the importance of really weighing our district priorities of education, site and traffic, sustainability and community, and what those priorities mean to this town, and how they were developed by the town, and how we're looking at the options and really balancing all those priorities. And lots of really good questions from people, and a lot of patient answers and rebuttals and conversations. It was really great. And we're going to do this again on September 8th. The same forum, the same presentation is going to happen again. Hopefully a whole new group of people will come and continue the conversation about the options, because the school building committee needs to narrow it down to one very, very shortly. And that's the one that's going to get designed way more robustly and the one we're going to build. There's a survey that I think that we're working on a flyer that's going to go home to all households in Swampscott, and it'll have the information about the survey and some information about the building project. But you can also go to our website to do the survey. All of you guys need to do it. You can go to bit.ly/choose4 to do the survey as well. And then your feedback will be heard. It's not an official vote or anything, but it's just like the school building committee really needs to understand what preference people are leaning towards, so that we select a building that will actually be voted for in this town, because especially after hearing the superintendent's report, this can't not happen.
Suzanne, I just tried to type it in. You said it was bit.ly?
It's bit.ly, like
Okay.
a bit.ly.
Yeah.
And it's a backslash, right? And then do choose, CHOOSE, the number 4, swamp, SWAMP.
Is it a .com or no?
Oh yeah, I think so. That would be really good. No, do you have to even do .com after a bit?
I did it and I am here.
Oh, okay, so and the other opportunity, I'm telling you guys, you might hear it from me first here. We're going to have a joint, the select board are inviting the school building committee to a joint meeting next Thursday. The school committee is going to be invited to that too, to listen. So that'll be on September 3rd. September 3rd, that's a Thursday. And we're going to talk about the options, and there's a few other things on the agenda too, just related to the new school building. So you guys, it's going to be a conversation with hopefully the FinCom, the CIC, open space. I'm not exactly sure who all is getting invited to this, but just another opportunity for us to have a discussion and for people to listen to a discussion about this.
What's the date on that again?
September 3rd. So it's next Thursday, and then the following Tuesday on September 8th is the second community forum for community members to participate in the conversation. All right, did I get everything? Now I'm done.
The link works.
Excellent.
Thank you.
All right, that's it. That's all I have, Amy.
All right. We're going to move on to the consent agenda. Is designed to expedite the handling of routine and miscellaneous business with the district. The school committee may adopt the entire consent agenda with one motion. At the request of any committee member, any items may be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda for discussion. Tonight we have two things: the regular session minutes from our meeting on August 12th and the warrants number 2055, number 21-06, and number 21-08. Do I have a motion for approval?
I'll make a motion.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any discussions, questions? Well, this is easy. Roll call vote. Ted?
Yes.
Karen?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
And I make that unanimous. And it is 10:07. I will accept a motion to adjourn.
I'll make it.
Who wants to second it?
I'll second.
Roll call vote. Karen?
Yes.
John?
Yes.
Ted?
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And me. We are adjourned. Dink.
Thank you.
Hey, Amy, before you log off, we just copy those question and answers.
Absolutely.
Just so you can see them.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Yes.
Suzanne?
Yes.
And me.
Just keep the live stream going for a second, Amy.
Absolutely.
Hey, Amy, before you log off, we just copy those question and answers.
Absolutely.
I don't hear what he's saying.
Yeah, I just heard us very delayed. I'm thinking that was on the live stream.